G'day, folks. It is the coach here, Anthony. How are we all? Welcome to Faction Focus, Cities of Sigmar. This one has been waiting and waiting and waiting. I've been so excited to get into this book, and I have two amazing guests that are going to be with us talking all things city. I thought, if I'm going to sit on the Council of the Free People, I need a Dwarden, I need an elf, and I found two of the best allies that a human could possibly ask for. The first one is from the Shire of Hobbiton himself. Lee, how are you? You are our Dwarden, Rune Master, Go-Trek.
Fan of people that don't move very fast. Yeah, that would be me.
Stumpy legs. So Lee is a Masters level player based out in New Zealand. He is all things amazingly dwarfs. He's been doing really well. Do you want to let everyone know a little bit about yourself, Lee?
So yeah, I live now in Wellington, New Zealand. I've been playing Sigmar for a few years, and I really enjoyed list building. So this kind of book is just really something that I really, really enjoy, and it's just a great book.
It is an amazing book. I think we were chatting earlier that this is the type of book that we could sit here for 3 years playing different lists and still not be bored. So the complexity, but the beauty of the book as well. So it's great to have you here talking all things Dwarden and cities.
Thanks for having me.
A man who may need no introduction. He has elf in his name. He is the elf bro himself. I met him 3 years ago at the Masters where he was running. You were running the elves. You were running
Order Draconis. Back before Draconis was a thing.
This was like 2017. He's running an Order Draconis player. He absolutely beats the guy who we think is going to win the Masters with these elves. And I thought no better way to bring in the elf review than with Hayden. How are you, mate?
I'm good, matey. How are you?
Good. You're pretty happy that the elves have got a book?
Yeah, definitely. It's good seeing all of these older elf models finally getting updated rules and brought into the new age of Sigmar.
Mate, I tell you what, there's people excited to start new armies. You've got people who are excited to rebase their squares onto rounds. And there are people who are going, I've always wanted to start some type of army, whether it's a free guild, whether it's, dark elf kind of themes, Dwarden. And this book is just so great.
Yeah, 100%. You get a lot of really, really cool, different looking armies because there's so many, units in this book that you can just pick and choose. It's great.
Yeah, and I was just mentioning that's the beauty and the complexity. And I can see in a lot of people who are really struggling with the list building in this particular book because there are so many synergies. There's so many different types of units. It's probably got one of the largest unit allocation. It's almost a very Stormcast level, if not. I think it's just a few units under Stormcast. So then you add in all the allies that are available to us. This can be very hard to build a list. So we're going to do our best to construct different types of armies and different types of choices for consideration. We don't have all of the answers here. I don't think there is a silver bullet that one city is the best, one unit choice is the best. But there's going to be some things that we're going to talk about to build the types of cities that you want to build. Does that sound like a plan, boys?
Sounds good.
That sounds great.
Awesome. So a bit of narrative, I guess. We should talk about who are the cities of Sigmar. So I have my view and how the humans have claimed the lands and they've started to rebuild. But Lee, are you a bit of a lore master when it comes to the Dwarden or the cities of Sigmar?
Not particularly. We have a few lore masters here, and I've been trying a lot more for this. But I'd say this is the first book that I've actually read the front half of a battle tome on. So normally I'm a skip to the back type of kind of guy on these ones, but I think the lore here is interesting, and particularly with each city you get a little story on the side, and they've really helped sort of set the phase and the how they're pitching each of the cities to what their play style will be. So I think the two have been more intertwined in this one.
I think the beautiful thing is you can make your own narrative as well. Just as much as following the narrative in the book, you can make sister cities, you can make your own theme. Hayden, how have you started taking over the cities with the elves?
So I find it really cool because I played elves back in the old world. So it's cool to see how they've brought a lot of the narrative from that old world into these cities of Sigmar. So you've still got your Phoenicium, who are the, Phoenix Temple. You've still got all your Scourge Privateers, and it's really built on what was originally put down in the Firestorm book. What that was 2018.
think it was actually earlier. I think it was 2017.
Yeah,
So,
2017, yeah. And they've just built on that, and it's just really cool to see how they're just continually building this world and this story around everything that's going on, especially now they're bringing in like the whole Nagash side of thing as well. So
yes. Yeah, so the story really is that we had the old world, which was the Warhammer Fantasy Day, where we had the cities of the High Elves and the Empire and the dwarves, and I was trying to think of a name. I think it was just the dwarves. But all of the humans and all the good people, had their little cities, and we're all kind of isolated. Like the Empire was the Empire, Bretonia was Bretonia. The Wood Elves didn't really talk to the High Elves, and in that olden days, it was really crushed by the end times. And for a long time, those cities were kind of dispersed, and those people were really much refugees across the mortal realms. And the narrative here is that Sigmar has started to wrestle the particular realms, and he set up these cities, which are the real anchor points for being around realm gates and starting to kind of almost repopulate after the Age of Chaos. So very much he started to really flex his muscle in two particular realms, which is why the cities are based in two realms of the seven. And this is starting to kind of flourish in the kind of mingling of different races. No longer is it just human cities. It's very much almost like a Dungeons and Dragons, where lots of cities are kind of intermixing. That's the way I read the book and the way I perceive the world.
I think it's quite an interesting point from that, is because I never played Fantasy Battle in the old world, so I don't seem to have the same hang up as some people have about having a mixed army of elves, dwarves, humans. It's metropolitan there, everyone's everyone in the cities for me, and it's quite easy for me to mix in any of those races and not have a knee-jerk reaction like some people who don't find it as comfortable. Says the man coughing.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is that if you were an old Empire player back in the day and all you want to play as humans, you can absolutely do that. There's no reason that you have to be forced to play with anything that is not human, if that's you. But if you're like, look, I've always wanted to do an army that is, in the stories back in the day, is that the Empire was, had a really strong alignment with the dwarves. And you've always wanted that story, but you've never been able to tell it, you can now tell it. And you can tell it in your own way in the new Age of Sigmar. So you can either go a mixed race, you can go a combination, or you can do whatever you want. I think that's the beautiful thing about this particular book. And if you want to make your own theme, do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So what attracted you guys to Hayden? I know you've been an elf player for a long time. What attracted you to not only the elves, but to the cities of Sigmar? Why are you rebasing and coming into the new world?
So I really enjoyed just looking at the Firestorm book and thought this is really cool to have these older armies that just have actually allegiance abilities, so you can have some fun with them, get those old models out on the table. So for them to bring even more models in or armies into that just was a really cool idea. And it's just, I guess, a chance for me to play with old elves with new rules. So that's the main thing.
And for anyone who doesn't know what Firestorm is, Firestorm was a campaign that people played through as a box game as well, and it came with some rules for not only all of the Grand Alliances, but most importantly, it was these cities. And the rules were very small compared to this particular book, but it kind of planted the seed that we now have today.
Yeah.
And Lee, why did you pick up the dwarves? You could have picked up any book. You could have picked up Slaanesh. You could have picked up Daughters of Cain. You could have picked up Blades of Corn. Why did you pick up Duarden and chase the masters with them?
I started off, why? I started off with Sylvaneth when I first came into the hobby, and then gradually over the time, I found I was going to the battalions that allowed you to take more and more allies, and I just kept buying more and more other units and fitting it around there. And I played Sylvaneth to a relatively high level for a long time. And one thing I wanted to change is when I was changing armies, I wanted to learn a new skill. And that was going from unlimited movement to 4-inch movement. And I played a couple of games against them, and I didn't think they could be as bad as they were, which they're not great, but they're not terrible. And it started going from there. So gradually picked up more and more dispossessed units. Then I picked up some KO units. So when cities has dropped, I've got quite a lot of different factions that quite go in together. And like I said at the beginning, I enjoy list building. So this kind of melting pot is like really appealing to me, because you can pick what you want to play and counter any of your local metas quite quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Lee, I remember because I came over to New Zealand to play Notorious, March this year. You've been running Tempest Die since then.
Yeah. So I've been talking about Tempest Die for a while, and as when we came back, because a few of the Kiwis, we came over to CanCon this year, and as soon as I came back from that, I haven't played Sylvaneth since, and we started playing Tempest Die, and it just gives you it's like any army. You can pick it up, but to play it well, you need to practice it. And Tempest Die in particular helps a lot of patch over a lot of units problems.
Yeah,
and it becomes quite addictive. So I've played that in a few tournaments, and then I played Dispossessed in a few tournaments this year, and then played KO just before the book came out. So now I can play all of them together.
What a time to be alive.
I tell you.
So you're talking about the depth of the book, and this might be a nice segue into the strengths of this particular book. So Lee, as we're talking about the depth, what other strengths have you found as you've been list building from this particular book?
So the first one, I think you covered at the beginning about it. It's good for anyone, because you can play what you want when you want. So anyone who's got an older collection, anyone who has always wanted to play that one army or that one unit, that's a real strength, because you buy in, play that. I also think when you start reading the book, it's so strong now, but with the options you have, it's going to be playable for a long time without getting bored. You can switch between the cities. Point costs are going to make some units great going forward, and then if there's any more allies come in, like Sylvaneth Stormcast with their new releases, it freshens up the book again. And on the flip side, it's now making your knowledge base across the game a lot better, because you're seeing interactions that you might not have seen before. So I think that's a real strength for the hobbyists as well. Just the conversions you can do is it's just amazing. People are a lot more imagination than I've got are going to do some amazing things.
Hayden's got a smirk. He's got something to say there.
Oh no, I'm good.
All right, so you got conversion opportunities. You got the breadth of the book. Hayden, what else have you noticed when looking at cities? Like, what are the strengths?
It's really cool because you can play this, like you can have just one lot of models, one 2,000 point army, and you can play it in so many different ways. So you go, cool, I've played Hallowheart. I'm going to go and try this exact same list in Living City, because you can. There's nothing stopping you doing that, which is great, especially when like you look at these, I guess, cities and compare them to your, say, Legions and Legions of Nagash, where a lot of things don't mix. In cities, there's a lot of variability where you can go, well, this will work in Hallowheart, this same list will also work in Tempest Die, the same list will also work in Living City. Like it's less of, I guess, a financial cost if you want to play something different.
Yeah. Speaking of finance as well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the cost of the models are far cheaper than the newer armies. You know, you can pick up a battle line box in Australia for like $50 compared to those same boxes, you know, for $80 or $90 in a newer army. So I think the cost to entry, and even if you wanted to go to eBay, you could probably pick up some really cheap old armies if you're willing to strip the model. So the barrier to entry probably isn't as high as, let's say, a Fire Slayer's army.
And the playability, because it's not mono, it is a lot more as well. Since the book's dropped, I've brought a couple of Phoenixes, 20 odd Dark Shards, Gyrocopters, a Hurricane. None of that would have been in one army together, but now you've got an army that can play 7 different rules.
Yeah.
So so for that way, the buy-in is lower. But once it's got you, the buy-in will be higher.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing, is you can keep spending your hobby dollars in this army. But then again, if you were playing a different army, you'd probably just spend the money elsewhere. So you're always going to spend the money. Let's own that. A few other strengths that I'll call out here is, obviously we've talked about the breadth, but these armies play in all the phases. We have strong hero phases. We have shooting. We have movement. We have combat. We have charging. We have battle shock. We have something for everything. Where I think some armies in the game don't have those abilities, or they don't play in certain phases, and you can really build around it. Or you can be a utility knife.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We always hear about balanced armies, and I'd like to try and make a balanced list that can compete all the way across, and that's the way I always use my Sylvaneth. And I think this book gives you a really good chance of doing a balanced army where, if you're talking tournament play, that you're not afraid of coming up against one or two armies that are just going to ruin you because you're so skewed one way or the other. So I think there's that opportunity here, which you haven't had with all the books that have come out before.
In saying all of that, though, Lee, if you wanted to go skewed, if you wanted to just completely own
you can,
if you wanted to, that's it. Like I'm playing Hallowheart at the moment, and most of my time is spending the hero phase casting magic. So if you wanted to have a heavy hero phase, you absolutely could. On the flip side, you could actually build for all the phases. So again, the power is really yours. And I think this also then ties into the weakness, which is that some people have paralysis analysis, where they're like, where the F do I start?
Yep, absolutely. And then there's so at the moment I'm writing a masters list, and those last, Hayden can tell us the amount I've been bugging him the last couple of weeks. The last 250 points is becoming a nightmare, because there is so much that you can do, so much that you want to do, you just can't fit it all in, and the points and the ideas go very, very quickly.
Well, I've even seen people who are just confused on which city to take. They're like, I have these models, which city do I even put them in? And that choice alone is confusing them. So let alone the so many heroes, there's so many synergies, but also then the cities.
Yeah, I can imagine that, absolutely. But then that will change as well the longer that we go on. Cities will come into favour and drop off. FAQs in December might hasten that, or new army releases might hasten that.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is that we can adapt with the meta. If people are freaking about Slaanesh and the Flesh Eater Courts, doing real damage in the combat phase, we've got shooting and magic to kind of try to stop them. But then on the flip side, if shooting becomes a real problem, we've got tools like the Living City, where you're able to use your movement to kind of start sniping and taking out heroes and kind of moving around the board. So I think we've got all the tools. Hayden, anything else you think from a weakness point of view?
No, you guys pretty much covered it, really. More so, just the choice is a double-edged sword. You can either go I have all this choice, and then it's suddenly on the same tide, I have no idea where to start. Exactly what you guys said. Like, there's just that freedom of choice is such a big thing.
Yeah, I would probably say that we are mostly a jack of all trades and master of probably none. There is longer range shooting for our units outside of this book. We don't have a summoning pool. We don't have allegiance ability. We don't have a terrain piece. We don't have endless spell specific to us, although we do get special endless spell rules. We have lots of good stuff. Our combat stuff is pretty good, but it's probably not the best. Our heroes are decent, but they're not the best.
Yeah, it's like Stormcast. They're just a toolbox army. Yeah.
I think the summoning one there is a really good point, because most what you're starting the game with, that's it pretty much. They're always there's always ways to do some stuff, but pretty much that's your lot. Yeah.
Summoning's not a problem. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Definitely don't play Slaanesh at all. Yeah, summoning and depravity are fine.
All right, Slaanesh, bro.
They got pointy ears.
But look, long story short, it's a great army, lots of tools. The choice is both a power and a weakness. I think it's going to come down to the types of builds that you make that really start to accentuate whether you have strengths or weaknesses. But the tools are there to build the army that you want to run that can adapt to the meta, can adapt to your style, and that's exciting. Before we start getting into building lists and talking about the armies, what do we actually get if we just start at a high level without talking about the cities? What do we get by being a free cities battle tome compared to, say, being mixed order? And I'm going to bring up the rules here. So, Lee, do you want to take us away with what we get for taking this allegiance?
Okay, so if we just start with, say, magic will be the first one to start with. So being 3 cities means that any endless spells that you take are automatically empowered, no matter what realm that you're in. So if you take, for instance, Life Swarm, that's always D6 wounds or models back when it's cast. Obviously, the other ones that people will generally hear about would be the Bridge, that now moves 24 inches rather than 12 inches. And Portals is unlimited range. So there's great power just in them to start with. That's an amazing ability. It does take some playing around with, though, because it's not just empowered for you. And I think that's something that needs to be highlighted. It's also empowered for your opponent. So if they want to move Life Swarm, then suddenly they're getting the benefits of it being empowered.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with what we're talking about here, on the War Scroll card of Endless Spells, there will be often a subject or a little heading that says empowered by the realm or empowered by the particular realm that spell's from. And you'll find that rule is superior than the generic rule. To give you an example, the Shackles. So when you cast Shackles, you put one, I think it's within 12 inches of the model or 18, and then 2 additional shackles have to be within 6 inches of that first one. Now, when it's empowered by the realm, instead of it being 6 inches between the two, you now have a choice of being up to 9 inches. So all of a sudden you can manipulate that endless spell far more than what your opponent could do because they're not empowered by the realm. So not every endless spell is empowered by the realm, but you will see those spells. Yeah.
It's that's good. And again, these things are, you'll hear us say this a lot, double-edged sword. They're really powerful, but they need to be used properly. And sometimes you can go down those rabbit holes of trying to put too many of them in, and that they're not worth the points or have the effects that you want. But I think it's just such an amazing rule to have, and it's great straight off the bat to get that.
So we've got the empowering of the endless spells. What do we also have? We also have the Honored Retinue.
So Honored Retinue is great because a lot of the older models and older ranges had weaker heroes. By weaker heroes, we mean 5 or 6 wound heroes that weren't taken as much because, and playing dispossessed, they could be sniped so easy and they wouldn't hang around. So you're having to hide them a lot more, and you can use them to their full ability or particularly offensively. The Honored Retinue is a great way of trying to keep them more alive. So what basically happens is you have a unit that you nominate before the battle starts, and that can be between 5 or 20 models. And while they're within 3 inches of your general, they can take any wounds that are put onto your general. So, for instance, say someone's cast a spell away, you're going to have to take D3 mortal wounds. It turns out to 2. You don't roll for that save if you've got any save, but what you'll do is you'll roll a dice, and on each 4 up, you can pass that wound onto your retinue, and then they can have the save.
So you've essentially built out a whole additional bunch of wounds for your general.
It's great, and again, this will take a while to get used to, and to play positioning is going to be a big thing for this. But while it says models as well, it doesn't actually talk about wounds. So you could have a big block of 5 multiple wound models as a retinue. Depends how what you think is the best way for the way that you want to play.
Yeah. So if my general is the let's say a Frost Phoenix or a Hurricanum, because it has more than 6 wounds, I'm not able to get that retinue. But if I'm taking a Sorceress, a Free Guild General, an Elf Anointed, because it has a wound characteristic of 6 or less, I'm able to appoint this retinue.
And I suppose we're going to have to come back to this with a couple of some of the later points. But if you look at storm keeps and some of the cities, that they can take other factions, and when you do take them in your army, they actually get the city's keyword as well. So again, we'll be thinking a bit broader on this. So anyone from Stormcast, anyone from Sylvaneth, anyone from KO, if you're taking them in the cities that allow them, they could be your general, and as long as they're 6 wounds or less, they can be your. They can have retinue. So that opens it up even more.
So like a Knight in Cantor could be a general in the cities of Sigmar, even though it's a Stormcast model. Because of this Stormkeep, which allows you 1 in 4 units, can be a Stormcast unit, and they gain the keywords of both cities of Sigmar and then the city that you're from. So
that's correct. And then they'd also, because of the retinue rules, you could have a retinue for them as well. So it's another layer on top of that.
I could have like Sequitors, I could have, these Phoenix Guard, I could have a whole bunch of things that it's pretty crazy.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
That's very cool.
Yep. And the last one, or the last generic, is the Adjutant. And what this is that you nominate a second hero. And again, you have that wound characteristic of 6 and below. And if they are within 3 inches of your general at the start of the battle round or your turn, you roll a dice, and on a 4+, you get a command point. It's brilliant. It's really good.
So it's almost like a little Dungeons and Dragons party where you got like this party of two little heroes running together and staying within 3 inches and hopefully generating that additional command point.
Yeah, and as you see as we go through the book, some cities are very CP hungry, so this is just another way. And particularly at the start of the game, this is very strong because you choose where your units are going to be. You're not actively trying to go after objectives or anything then. So as long as they're within 3 inches of each other, in your turn on the 4 up, you've got CP to start with. It's great.
And just to clarify a point with the loyal shields, you roll a dice, and then on a 4+, you bounce those wounds off to your retinue.
So pretty much like
Necromancer. The Necromancer does it, but I think it's on a 5. Maybe it's a 4.
No, it's on a 4 as well.
There you go. So there's a good chance.
If you think about it in real gameplay, it'll be you're going to have, say, a shooting attack. You're already going to have Lookout Sir, and then you've got an ability to pass on your wounds anyway. So it just makes people targeting your general not the greatest the thing to do.
And the Lookout Sir rule is -1 to hit if your hero is within
3 models.
A really good point to bring up as well, and just linking this all together, is that because these endless spells are also empowered, you use the life swarm to bring back your retinue. So then you've got a retinue that just doesn't die, and it just keeps coming back.
Yeah, that's a great point. You start to see the synergies already coming together, and there's lots of different synergies. But when you start thinking about the Soul Screen Bridge can, instead of go 12, you go 24. When you start thinking about the Quicksilver Swords, which allows you to roll 15 dice instead of 12, and then you go up against Chaos, and they become 5-zone mortal wounds instead of 6s. All of a sudden, you start to see the real power of this ability to amplify your spells. While at the moment they're like, that's a little benefit, but then when you start really looking at what it can do, my gosh, they're very cool.
Well, even if you look at ones that we all know are really strong, like Geminids, they have a little tweak to them as well, where you
can re-roll that damage.
Yeah. So it just adds a little bit to even makes spells that we haven't seen as much powerful, and the already powerful one just tweaks them even more.
Yeah, it's really given new life to, like, Emerald Life Swarm, for example, was almost never run. I don't think anyone really ever ran it. All of a sudden, it's now a hot take for almost every army. It's almost like one that you just don't leave without home. You take Geminids, you might take Balewind, you definitely take Life Swarm.
I'll tell you still roll a 1, though.
See, I'm loving Purple Sun and just having a Purple Sun that moves 12.
Yeah, that scares me because we got lots of. Well, I have a lot of bodies. But, so you get all this cool stuff, and the last thing we kind of alluded to, but we'll actually talk about properly now, is that you get to align your army to one of the strongholds, or essentially the free cities, which is your Hammerhall, your Living City, your Greywater Fastness, your Phoenicium, your Anvil Guard, your Hallow Heart, and your Tempest Eye. So within that subsection of rules, there's, I guess, essentially a sub-allegiance where you're going to get command traits, you're going to get artifacts, you're going to get spells, you're going to get abilities. There's going to be all this cool stuff that comes with that sub-allegiance, as well as everything you've seen. Everyone here gets these battle traits, everyone, and then you get to choose even more stuff with the city you choose from.
Yep, and like say with Stormcast taking the city's keyword, that just opens it up even more. That's really good. Whereas before, you could have buffs that wouldn't go across the army. Now that's not a problem.
The one thing I will say though is this is the first time we've seen this across Age of Sigmar, is that these cities are landlocked to a realm. So with every other battle tome out there at the moment, you can get the ethereal amulet from Shaiish on any model you want. But unfortunately, you can't do that because none of the cities of Sigmar are actually locked in that realm. So as we get into the book, we'll talk a bit more about the realms and the what you can access. But know that some of them are locked to, actually, they're all locked to a particular realm. Some have access to 2, but otherwise they all have 1.
That's a really good point.
Cool. I've just had a few people building lists, and they're talking to me about picking an artifact outside of a realm, and you obviously can't do that. So no. just a consideration. Cool. Should we talk about the cities?
Let's do it.
Yep. Cool. Now, before we talk about the cities, I guess we were talking offline about this, and I think this is going to be one of the keys to list building. Is that we have so many choices. I think there's something like 50 or 60 different unit choices available to us in our core. The easiest way to get confused is trying to pick a unit and trying to build around it. The best people, or the best advice we can give you at the moment, is starting to look at the theme from a free city and then looking at the synergies, looking at what works well under that type of banner, because each of the cities have a different play style, they have a different strength, and you kind of start to get the feel of what's going to work well. Now, obviously, this is from a competitive point of view. If you've got a narrative story behind your army, do what you want to do. It's your hobby. Play the way you want to play. But this is more about getting the most competitively out of the book. Do we agree with that sentiment, gentlemen?
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm not here to say that war hydras are not good. I'm not here to say that the Luminarch should always be chosen over the Hurricanum. You do what you want to do, but we're going to be a bit more critical with our list building. So
you're looking about roles. What role you have in the army, and then finding the unit that you want to fulfill that role.
Yeah, and I think the best thing about this is that there is no silver bullet. There is no one particular battle line that is the best. There is no one particular hero that is the best. So you can build around your style. We'll start off with Hammerhall. All right, so I'll take Hammerhall because it's something that I've played with. So Hammerhall, what is Hammerhall? What are you going to get for your Hammerhall buck? So the beautiful thing about Hammerhall is you can choose either one of 2 realms. So it's actually the only city that has access to 2 realms, because it has essentially 2 realm gates that the city is attached to. It's attached to either Akshi or Gairan. Now, a couple of the benefits you're going to get from Hammerhall is banners held high. So at the start of the hero phase, you roll a dice for each Hammerhall unit that has a standard bearer. On a 6, you generate a command point. So this is starting to reward people with lots of units, obviously lots of banners. So increasing your chance for that command point. You have the Magister of Hammerhall. So if you have Aventus Firestrike as your general, which is a Stormcast model, in the first hero phase, you generate a command point. The Pride of Hammerhall allows you to not take battle shock for your units when they're wholly within your territory, not your deployment zone, your territory. And then finally, the command ability, which is the one that people really, 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 really like. And that is, you can use his command ability at the end of your combat phase. If you do so, you can pick one friendly Hammerhall unit that's wholly within enemy territory. wholly within 12 of a friendly hero, and then 3 within an enemy. So essentially, it allows them to attack again at the end of the combat phase. Now, you can't use that command ability more than once per phase, but if you start thinking about double piling in, we'll talk about this stuff later, but you can start to do some real combat-y type shenanigans under this city.
Yep, and it's got limitations which are great because it promotes aggressive play. With the has to be in the enemy territory, so it stops it. It takes it from being a really great rule to a broken rule. By its limitations.
What we'll do is we'll do a helicopter overview of all the cities first, and then we'll start building lists, and then finally we'll start tweaking into what are some of the good command traits, the spells. So I think right now we don't really know what command traits and spells are going to work well because we haven't chosen any models yet. But that's a bit of a high-level overview. We're starting to feel Hammerhall is a nice little combat city, and it's going to reward us having a lot of banners. The next city is the Living City. Hayden, is this one that you're comfortable taking on?
I love Living City. So Living City is based in Gairan. You do have the ability to take 1 Sylvaneth unit with every 4 units. So this also works in tandem with the Stormcast one. So you can take 1 Sylvaneth unit and 1 Stormcast unit in every 4 units.
Wow.
So you can take a Stormcast unit, a Sylvaneth unit, and 2 Cities units, and there's your 4. It works really, really cool to have those kind of mixed lists. So one of their abilities is Hunters of the Hidden Paths. It allows you to put 1 unit off in reserve for every unit you have set up on the board, and they can come on within 6 inches of a board edge, 9 inches away from enemy models. So you're essentially turning your army into Wanderers, which is really, really cool. They're also attuned to nature. So at the start of your hero phase, you can heal 1 wound to every Living City unit. So it's really cool for, say, like Colonel Hunters, etc., etc., etc. All those multi-wound units, so your heroes as well. And the command ability is at the end of the shooting phase, pick a Living City unit that's shot, that is more than 9 inches from enemy units, wholly within 18 of a hero. So it can make a normal move at the end of the shooting phase. But you can only do it once.
Okay, so I could put some, I don't know, say Colonel Hunters on the side of the board, do some shooting at a hero, or start chipping away at an important unit, and then because I'm 9 inches away from the enemy, I could kind of slide back and make it a bit harder for them to charge or get them out of range for an attack.
Yeah, even better, you can take because you can take Sylvaneth units, you can take a Spirit of Durthu, put it 9 inches away, shoot with that Spirit of Durthu. Because it is a hero, you can use the command ability from Durthu and make him move 3 inches out to then be able to be in combat.
So a unit that can shoot and has got good combat prowess could actually advance and then make that charge instead of it being 9. You probably Durthu's got a movement of what, 5, 6?
Movement 5, yeah.
Perfect. So sorry, wait, you got like a 4-inch charge. If you had a CP up your sleeve, you could then re-roll it. So that's a pretty nasty combo.
Yeah, you can do some really cool stuff with it.
So you allow me to disappear from a shooter, or I can advance if I'm a combat guy.
Yeah. And it also counts as a setup, not a move. So with all these things within the book, where you can set up and it doesn't count as a move, you can get all these bonuses from different units. It's really, really cool.
So an example of that would be
Iron Drakes.
Yeah. So give us an example of why the Iron Drakes are good.
So when Iron Drakes go to shoot, but they haven't moved, they get +1 attack on all their shooting.
Great. So same as the Free Guild crossbowmen. So all of a sudden they go from 1 shot to 2 shots.
Yeah, and they can be set up 9 inches away on a board edge. So you can get all those, lovely units that are trying to hide behind a screen. Suddenly you've got a big unit of shooting that are going to go, cool, I'm going to try and shoot off all those heroes.
Like, while the rest of your army advances and they're kind of being torn apart between shooting.
Yeah.
Very cool. The next city we'll talk about will be Greywater Fastness. Now, Lee, have you got any experience with Greywater being your Duarden, or do you want me to take this one?
No, I can have a go. So the first thing to talk about there is, so this is essentially the artillery promoting city. And you see from the Rune Lord there that he gets an extra prayer. And what's great about this is Rune Lord's prayers go off on 2s, and there isn't a penalty for going off on ones. And this is additional, so you can still use your other prayers. But what this one does is it allows you to your next hero phase to add 1 to attack rolls on missile units from the unit. So if you're looking at your rocket batteries or anything like that, suddenly you got +1 to hit. It's
Right.
great. Yeah. And the range, not too bad. So I think it's like a 12-inch range. I think you need to be close. Oh, sorry, I'll check that up in a bit. But secondly, that you can increase the range of your grey water fast and iron well arsenal by 3 inches. Now, we're talking some of these ranges are in the 30s already, but adding an extra 3 inches is particularly good because it means that you can be further out of counter-attack range. Also, when you're looking at other units which are covered within this, such as the gyrocopters, you're then you're going to an 11-inch range on their guns rather than an 8-inch game, which for their role in the army, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, just means they're capturing a lot more bodies for those extra shots.
Just be mindful, guys, that they've got to have the keyword Iron-Willed Arsenal. So a Free Guild handgunner, for example, does not have the keyword of Iron-Willed Arsenal. So, but certainly your volley guns, your Hellstorm rocket batteries, your gyrocopters, your steam tanks, they're all Iron-Willed Arsenal. So they get that +3 to their range.
And this obviously then goes into the salvo fire, which is the command ability, which has different keywords to this. So that's grey water fastness, free guild handgunners, iron drakes, and heroes can add 1 to the hit rolls made from attacks with missile weapons until the end of that phase. A unit cannot benefit from this command ability twice. So we're starting to get a lot of pluses to hit. And we're also getting different units that we can put them on as we go through this one.
So you start to see the synergy starts to play nicely if you go down that Iron Drake or that handgunner route, but they're not necessarily going to get all the benefits, but they kind of start complementing. Is that fair to say, Lee?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair to say.
Awesome. So that's grey water. So we're kind of starting to feel that Hammerhall is very much more combat orientated. We've had Living City, which is a bit more movement shenanigans that are available to you. Grey water is certainly rewarding you for shooting and war machines. The next one we have is the Phoenicium. So Hayden is smiling. He is an elf bro through and through, and this very much screams elf.
Yeah, so this is based around Phoenix Temple, which is one of my favorite armies. It is the old High Elves. So you do get, it is from Guy Rant. You get +1 to hit and wound rolls with melee weapons if a unit has been destroyed in the same phase. So that's very, very cool, where you can try and send up like little MSU units to be kind of sacrifices, let it die, and then the rest of the army gets +1 to hit and wound for that phase. Then we've got Blood of the Earth Phoenix. So all of your Phoenixes get +1 wound, which is great considering most of them have a 4-up shrug. And then the command ability is Living Idols. So pretty much until the end of the turn, when a model is slain, it can fight before it is removed from play. So you have Executioners, you have Great Swords, all of these kind of different heavy-hitting units where you can go, cool, you can hit me first as much as you like. My guys are still going to be able to fight when they die.
So at the end of the phase, if a friendly Phoenician model is slain, so not the unit, the model is slain, then cool.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that. It's almost like your plague monks or flagellants, where they get to attack
and
as you remove them.
And Volkite Berserkers,
Volkite Berserkers, and then you go a little bit cheeky with something like the Life Swarm, and then you bring them back.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah.
So how would you summarize this kind of theme?
So it's very much, I've been struggling to make Phoenicium work, but it's very much I guess a give and take army. You need to be able to give units away to be able to deal more damage. So it's really hard to find a synergy with certain units where you're not sacrificing too much.
I think just to follow on that, this is probably the best example of a city that we're still trying to find the balance for, because the Phoenicium, you're expecting to take Phoenix Guard, Phoenixes, things like that, but they might not actually be the best units that fit into this city to benefit from what from what the city gives you in abilities,
because they're very durable.
Yeah, it's you kind of want things to go to get the bonuses, but you're thematically thinking that you have to take things that don't like to die, basically.
Yeah. I found a very similar theme, not the exact same, but a similar theme with the Grey Water, where you're really spending 1,000 to 1,200 points in artillery when half of the benefits are going to support your Iron Drakes and your handgunners and other things. So some of these lists are a bit more, I guess, agile, and some armies like this, which are a bit more niche. And I would say the Phoenician is probably the most niche list build. Obviously, you can do anything you want in it, but to really take the most out of this particular build, it's a very niche kind of army.
Yeah.
You're really going down this Phoenix Temple route of Phoenixes and Phoenix Guard.
Yeah. It's a sleeper city, I think. For as the book develops and the player base develops, I think you'll start seeing more Phoenicians.
Yeah, not a lot of people talking about it because it's a complex city. I think it's not the easiest one to pick up.
That's it.
The next one is Anvil Guard, and the Anvil Guard one is a very interesting one. If you are from the old world and you played something like the Dark Elves, this city is definitely that kind of narrative. So, Hayden, you're an elf boy. Do you want to take a stab at this one?
Yes. So this is very different to the way that it was in Firestorm, but it's still very, very good. So they get illicit dealings. So pretty much you get one of a few different benefits that you can get. So you can either pick to have an additional friendly hero, can have an artifact. You can get an additional friendly dragon, Charybdis, or Warhydra to have a Drake Blood Curse, because they get a table of, I guess, mount traits for these things. Or Hidden Agenda, you get an extra D3 command points. They're all really, really cool little things. Then you've got your Drake Blood Curses, which is what is spoken about in the other one. They're kind of like your mount traits. And the command ability, which is make an example of the weak, use it to start the battle shock phase, and one model in that unit is slain. However, you don't need to take battle shock for that unit. Well, for units wholly within 18 of that unit, should I say.
So what type of army or play style do you think this kind of rewards?
So looking at these, it's really cool for stuff like your Scourge Privateers, because you've got your Charybdis, you've got your War Hydra, and it's really good for Darkling Covens as well, because you get and Order Serpentis at the same time, because you get Dragon, because your dragons get mount traits as well. So your Dreadlord on Black Dragon, or your what's it called? What's the other one? Sorceress on Black Dragon get mount traits.
I think if when we come back to talk about this in a bit deeper, you'll find that there's some spells coming up that open this city right up. And
100%.
When you read this first thing, you're thinking, oh, it's more of a hobbyist, and then as you're going through, you start thinking, oh, actually, there's more there than you originally thought.
Yeah, and things like the Charybdis and the War Hydras are something that you don't see very often. There was, in Australia, there's probably only a handful of people that would run Charybdis, and they were the joke of the community. But all of a sudden now, with these, some more than others, but they're now becoming more of a viable solution in your army compared to a hobbyist choice. So, Lee, you've nailed it on the head. As we get into the command traits, the spells, and the artifacts, some of these options really start to stand on their own. So, you might even argue that something like the Flagellants also kind of fit into that theme. But there's lots of cool things, but definitely rewarding that Order Serpentis and Darkling Coven kind of build.
Yeah.
Should I take this one?
This is all you, my friend.
Yeah, you go for it.
All right. So this is the most narrative city in the game. So this is certainly at first glance the strongest of the builds, or at least the perception that this is the strongest build. So Hallowheart is a city which is very much a magically themed city, and it's from Akshi. So what do you get from that? So it's very, again, very magic orientated, that the Eldritch attunement. So Each time a friendly Hello Heart unit is affected by a spell or an endless spell, you can roll a dice, and on a 5+, you get to ignore the choice. Ignore the effect of the spell or the endless spell to that unit. Now, this is a little bit different to some of the back, a year or two. There are still some War Scrolls to this day that force you to roll that dice, whether it's a Mystic Shield or if it's going to be a negative spell. The beautiful thing with the attunement is that you get to choose. So if it's going to help you, you definitely don't have to roll the dice. But if an opponent or maybe a predatory spell is coming your way on that 5+, you get to ignore that. And as we get into this city later on, you can actually bring that down from a 5 to a 4. So you get to ignore spells almost 50% of the time. The second one is the Mages of the Whitfire Court. So all Hello Heart units get to cast an additional spell. So all of a sudden your 1 spellcaster becomes 2. And if you are bringing in a Stormcast unit and they get the keyword that is Hello Heart, even a Knight Incantor, a Lord Arcanum, all the different spellcasters are going to get a second spell, which is really cool. The third and final thing you get is a command ability, which is called Arcane Channeling. So you can use this command ability at the start of your hero phase. If you do so, pick 1 friendly Hello Heart wizard hero and roll the dice. That wizard's going to suffer that many mortal wounds. However, until the start of your next hero phase, you can add that number to the casting roll to Hello Heart wizards that are within 12. So essentially, let's imagine I have a Hurricanum, and I might have a couple of little wizards around the Hurricanum. The Hurricanum may take the damage. It takes D6 mortal wounds. And in turn, let's say I rolled a 5. It means that my other wizards who are casting 2 spells a turn are getting +5 to that cast. So all of a sudden, when you start thinking about, and there are other ways to increase your casting levels, that becomes very hard to dispel. When you're adding +5, I had a game recently where I rolled a 17 on an arcane bolt. That is very hard to unbind. So if you've got certain spells you really want to get off, or you don't want your opponent to unbind it, and you've got 6 to 8 to 10 spellcasters, all of a sudden you're making your opponent make some very challenging decisions on which spells to try to uncast, and then to actually then roll the dice to unbind it. So you definitely have magical supremacy to the level of a Nagash or a Zench force.
Just a point to bring up as well, that command ability can be used multiple times on the 1 unit. It doesn't say that it can only be used once.
This is true.
Yeah, and there's other things, isn't there? Like having, if you've got a mortal wound save, you can actually try and save the wounds that you've taken. So
and then one of the spells allows you to heal D6 wounds, and then so all of a sudden you could take damage, and there's a strong likelihood that you can actually, in seconds, be still at full health. So we'll get to those shenanigans later, but you can start to see the magical supremacy that's starting to come out of Hello Heart.
Can I also ask that when you rolled a 17 to cast that arcane bolt, wasn't it unbound on an 8?
It was for the purpose of the show. It was unbound on an 8, and that's because I was playing against a Khorne opponent, and they automatically unbind on an 8. However, if a Khorne player can roll an 8 on 2d6 against a 17, they get a credit and a high 5 from me, because that's awesome. And obviously there's things like the Knight Incantor that can automatically unbind. So there are other ways to, Khorne has allegiance stuff you can unbind straight away, but in the average game, anything above,
it's very, very hard to stop that.
Anything above like an 11 or a 12, which is very easy to do, by the way, in this army, is very hard to unbind, let alone you're doing 6 to 10 spell casts a turn.
It's very reminiscent of old Nile Root. Because you're all getting extra casts, and very, very
the magical. 2 casts, definitely,
If you're from the old world as well, you would probably kind of feel this theme from the High Elves, which were very much known for magical supremacy and very high cast rolls. So the final city we've got to talk about before we start getting into list building is going to be Tempest Eye. So Tempest Eye, I think, Lee, you've been playing around with a little bit Tempest Eye.
Yeah, I'll take that. So this is the city I play at the moment, and is my favourite city in the book, to be honest. At the moment, I think that could change. But anyway, Tempest Eye, its lore is about being on the outer rims of the terrain. So it's a build about speed and saves basically. So first thing to know about Tempest Eye is, in addition to your Stormcast allies, you can also take 1 in 4 to be Caradron overlords.
Ooh.
So opens up the city build straight again. So that's 1 in 4 can be KO, 1 in 4 can be Stormcast, 1 in 4 can be allies, 1 in 4 can be the rest of the book. So there's a massive amount of variety straight there. So its first one is called Alert and Forewarning. Now that gives every unit in the first turn, in your first turn, an extra 3-inch movement. Now, if you take, like I said, I play a lot of dwarves, 4-inch movement suddenly becomes 7. And then there's been other changes in there that I've been getting dwarves to move in that first round between 12 and 14 inches quite reliably. So you're making weaknesses in armies just go away. And then you're also buffing things like Outriders and Pistoliers, which are battle line in this city. Suddenly they're moving 15, 16 inches without even trying. So it's just so strong.
But then on the chariots.
Yeah. Oh, it's chariots. And then the flip side, the flip side on that is it also gives you +1 to save in the first round, which is so strong. And the reason I love this is that you've suddenly got a city that doesn't care if it goes first or second, and that frees you up. You can put as many units and drops as you want, because if you go first, you've got a massive threat range. If you go second, you can try and take the damage from an alpha attack, because you're getting that +1. You also, so that's across your units. So 3 ups become 2 ups, and so forth. So it's really, really strong. Outriders of the Realm. I think this is a hidden gem as well, because it gives +1 to your run in the army. And you'll see, for instance, just to highlight, that one of the changes in the Longbeards, or most of the Dispossessed War Scrolls, was that they couldn't get their bonuses to save if they run. That's been taken away now. So all of a sudden, you can run plus an extra 1 on this, plus an extra 1 from the unit, and there's no penalty to you. So you're still getting your good saves. We've talked about the standing contracts with the KO, and the last one is the command ability. And again, what this allows you to do is run and still shoot, which, when you think about all the shooting units that we have at disposal, is really strong.
Run some Engine Riggers, run some Iron Drakes, steam tanks, like
Scourge Chariots.
Gyrocopters.
Even if you take something like the Iron Drakes, so 4-inch move, you +3 suddenly becomes a 7-inch move, which is pretty good. But then you can run them, and you're getting +2, 1 from your ability, 1 from your banner, and then whatever you rolled on the dice. So you're then up to 12, 13, 14 inches, and then you have the shooting range on top, which is 16 to 20 inch on your torpedo. Now, suddenly your threat range in that first turn is huge, and you can take the counter a bit better, because you're getting +1 to save.
That's it. So you're sitting on an objective, and you got that +1 to save. So all of a sudden, it's like, I'm going to blitz you, I'm going to shoot you, and do some serious damage. And now you need to come at me, and I've still got my +1 to save for the first battle round. So not my first turn, for the full battle round. So that becomes a very tough first round for your opponent.
Well, that's it. And when I've come from Sylvaneth, where you had to go first, this is suddenly so freeing in list building, is that you really don't care. Okay, you let me go first, all right? There's all this I can do. Oh, you want to take the first time? That's fine. All my stuff's already sat in cover, so that's essentially a +2 save, and we'll go from there.
Those big blocks of Iron Drakes, Arcanauts, anything that shoots, add that additional speed, the ability to run and shoot. Holy wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's a great ability. It's only in the first turn, which is also good for making it doesn't make it stupid. Because if anything went past the first round, then it wouldn't be fun for anyone. Well, it'd be fun for me, but it wouldn't be fun for anyone you're playing.
No, that's great. So that in itself, Hayden, were you going to say anything?
No.
Cool.
No.
So that is essentially a very high level gyrocopter view of the cities. I'm glad you picked that up. Thank you. Thanks for that. So that's a very high level overview of the cities. What we're now going to talk about is the unit choices. So I guess now that we've got a theme, do I want my army to be very magic, very combat, very movement? Do I want them to have X or Y? We can start to then kind of funnel our city down even more to say, well, if I want a magic themed army, what's the things that are going to really help me? If I'm going to do a very combat heavy and I really want to take advantage of that double pile-in or that shooting, then what are those shooting things that's going to take them that make the most of the additional movement and the run and shoot? So what we're going to do now is we're going to drop to the choices. And I think no list would start without choosing some heroes. So we have lots of hero choices, lots of behemoths and battle lines and artillery. So I think the easiest way to do this is start calling out some of the heroes that we think are worthwhile and why you might use that. So what do we got? Leader choice. So we've got the Anointed, we have the Assassin, we have a Battle Mage, we have a Black Arc Fleet Master, Cogsmith, Free Guild General, Nomad Prince, Rune Lord, Sorceress, Warden King, Anointed on the Flame Phoenix, Anointed on the Frost Phoenix, Hurricanum has a wizard, Luminarch has a wizard, Battle Mage on Griffin, Free Guild General on Griffin, Steam Tank with a Commander, Sorceress on Black Dragon, Holy Wow, there's a lot of heroes.
Yeah.
Hayden, what would be one of the heroes that you would choose? Why and which city? Or if it's obviously works in all cities, then obviously that you call out as well.
So my favorite hero from the book is actually the Anointed on Flameheart. Now, back before this book came out, the Frostheart used to be the pick for everyone because it used to get a stackable +1 to save for every cast that was done within, 12 inches on a 2-up. So you used to get to like a -1, -2 save if you had a lot of casters, which was really, really cool. That's been changed, so it is now only ever +1. So you can only ever go from a 5-up to a 4-up. And the other cool thing is that now the Flameheart Phoenix has that as well, or the Flamespire Phoenix, should I say. So it's now not just on the Frostheart. The Flamespire also, when it dies for the first time on a 4-up, comes back to life with full wounds, which is very, very cool. The other thing it does is that, especially in Tempest side, where you can give it Thermal Rider Cloak, it's got, I think, a 12 or 14-inch move base. Give it Thermal Rider Cloak, it's got another +4. You give it the first turn, it's got another +3. And for every unit pick a unit that it goes over on a 2-up, I think it takes 5 mortal wounds or something like that when it moves over a unit. So there's a lot of damage output in that one hero, which is very cool. Plus, it's got a 4-up shrug, and I love Phoenixes because they're pretty model. So,
and I think like for that 5 mortal wounds as well, a run is still a normal move. So you're running it with the additional 1 that you're getting as well. So your range is just huge.
Yeah,
cool.
Put it in Hammerhall, and it could fight again at the end of the combat phase as well if you built a very combat orientated one.
Yeah. Put it in Living City, and you're appearing on the side of the board. You put it in Hallowheart. There's artifacts where you can give it. I think it makes it a hero, a wizard. Is it there?
You can choose a spell.
So suddenly you can use the command ability on the Phoenix to give everything else around it bonuses to cast, and because it's got the 4-up save, you can take those mortal wounds and save those mortal wounds. So,
and then there's even the Phoenicium, which we're talking about that last when it's literally the city that you think it's going to be in, and that it has a battalion for drops and pluses and all that sort of stuff.
And the battalion for the Phoenixes is a heal within range of a Phoenix. So it's just so much you can do with them. They're probably my favorite unit in the book.
So Fire Phoenix with the hero on top, the Anointed, is a good choice from you, Hayden?
Yeah.
Sweet. Lee, what's a choice from you?
So if we're going to talk about units that can go across all the cities, then I'll have 2 units that are quite similar but different, and that will be the Hurricanum and the Luminarch, and that's both with the wizard. They become his heroes, and the reason I think it's good to start with them is that their buff can go across all the cities, and can be tailored to what kind of build that you want. So with the Hurricanum, it gives an aura of +1 to hit. So I think the aura is about 10 inches out when it's full health.
And it's not wholly within.
No, because that gives a +1 bonus to any of your units. So you've got a really good starting platform across. It doesn't matter which city you're going for. Whatever you want to play, you've suddenly got that +1. But it does so much more as well, because it gives you a +1 to cast to specific wizards.
All the collegiate arcane, so your battle mages.
Yep, get +1 to cast as well. And that, again, you're topping up extra buffs that go across the cities. Then you have 2 great spells that it comes with, and that's Chain Lightning. And what that does on an 18-inch range, a unit takes D3 mortal wounds, but then it can jump to another unit within 6 inches on a 4+. So if someone, again, it's such a powerful spell. And then there's another one. I think it's Comets of
Casadora.
Yeah, thank you. And that one's moved on a cast for your cast roll goes against the movement of that unit that you're casting against it. So I think if it's less, then it gives you D3. If it's more than the movement, it gives you D6. So it's a great utility box. Then it has a shooting attack, which is just amazing. So it's you can shoot depending on how much damage you've taken, and you can pick it full health up to 3 units or the same units 3 times. And on a 2+, you're doing D3 mortal wounds. So
or you could spread them out. You could choose 3 different targets.
Exactly. Sorry, as long as they're in the range of the ability. So that's the great one for putting to start a build a list round that goes across all the cities. Now the Luminarch, which is the same kit, depending on how you want to you can build it 2 ways, is a more defensive one, and I like the Luminarch a lot. And what that does is, instead of giving you the aura of +1 to hit, it gives you an aura of a 6+ save. So you've got a 10-inch essentially death save on any wounds, and that will obviously include the unit itself and anyone you've put on. And as you said before, that's not wholly within. You then have 2 spells on there, which again are great. One is a Horde Buster, which burning something, I can't remember. And what that does is that you can do D3 mortal wounds, but the greater the unit, or the greater the number of models in that unit, the more wounds that you can do. So if you're attacking hordes, you can do up to 9 mortal wounds. The last spell it has is Pyre's Protection, which is you put it on one of your units within 18, again not wholly within, and that's -1 to hit that unit, which is such a great spell. Such a great spell.
Yeah.
And then we get to the shooting attack, and this has a laser on the top of it, which has a 30-inch range when you start. And you pick a place on the battlefield, and from that line, 30 inches back to your model, any units that it crosses takes D3 mortal wounds. But that would obviously include your own models, and that will catch you out more times than you'd like to think.
You'll still get the 6. You'll still get the 6 up. You'll still get that ward save.
Very good point. If you're within the buff range,
yeah.
But those 2 units from that one kit, I think they go across all of those cities without, no matter what kind of build you want to do, they have something to offer you. For instance, Luminarch's coming on from the board edge on living cities to +1 to attack in grey water fastness. We've already briefly covered that you're getting lots of pluses to hit there anyway, and then suddenly you've got another one.
Can run and shoot. I think of the Hurricanum is a great example of, although it doesn't seem thematically, it actually ties in really well with the grey water fastness. So you have that Hurricanum, and it's supporting some of those war machines, let's say the rocket batteries. And then I'm going to jump in with some heroes that all of a sudden make that artillery really crazy, especially in that first turn.
It's a toolbox piece, which doesn't feel like there isn't any part of what it can do is a negative. It's all pluses.
The cool thing about the Luminarch as well is it ignores the Deepkin have to shoot the closest unit rule, because you're picking a point on the battlefield. You're not actually picking a unit.
Good point.
Both really good choices. And if you don't want a hero on top and you don't have enough points, you can actually take both the Hurricanum and the Lumina without a hero. They obviously lose a couple of abilities, but if you like some of the stuff that we talked about, you can take it without the full investment of points. So something to consider with the Hurricanum and the Luminarch. All right, I'm going to pick 2, and then I'll give Hayden 3 because we only gave Hayden 1. Poor Hayden. So I'm going to pick 2 that are very close and dear to my heart, ones that I've run for years and years and years. The first one is the Free Guild General on foot. So in days gone past, this model could have a horse. Unfortunately, that horse is no longer with us. That Free Guild General is on foot. He is walking around the battlefield, or her. They are walking around the battlefield. So why do we take the Free Guild General on foot? Well, first off, it's okay in combat. It does have a double, I guess a two-handed weapon, and it does a little bit of damage. So if you do find yourself in combat, it can hold its own. It's only 100 points, so he's all right. I'm certainly not running him up the board and trying to take out Marathi. But the real benefit to taking the Free Guild General is his ability called Hold the Line, where essentially you can choose up to 3 models with a command point. You can spend a command point to choose up to 3 Free Guild units within 18. And if that unit doesn't move, it gets +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So all of a sudden you can start bringing your handgunners and your crossbowmen very easily down to hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s or wounding on 3s. There's some spells and some different things in other cities that are going to let you bring that down, but that general ability is great. What you can do as well, if you're being concerned about having being double turned, is you could apply that command ability, still move, and then if you were to lose the next turn, you would get +1 to hit and +1 to wound, because that rule is only applicable in. Sorry, if your model doesn't move, you lose that ability in that turn, not the battle round. So I still get it in the other side. So it's a bit of a little tricky nuance piece that I picked up recently, but not bad if you're being concerned when you start thinking about other rules. He's all right. He does well. The second, well, I mean, like, he's not there to kill things. He's there really to support. And if you find yourself in combat defending an objective, it's a great hero to do so. Yeah. The second one I'm going to call out is the Battle Mage. Now, the Battle Mage is 90 points. The wonderful thing about the Battle Mage is at the start of the game, you can choose one of 8 spell laws. So this model could be from any of the realms, and there are a whole bunch of cool spells. So there's things like Chain Lightning or Fireball. There's abilities, so they're very damage dealing ones. You're able to reduce your opponent's charge rolls. You're able to cause -1 to hit with Fierce Protection. You can use something. One of my personal favorites is the Shield of Thorns, where if you think you're going to be charged, you cast it on your own unit, and basically if anyone finishes a charge move within 3 inches, they suffer D3 mortal wounds. So it's a nice little deterrent, especially if you're someone like me and you've got bunches of handgunners and crossbowmen, which aren't that great in combat, but I could start chipping away at those units straight away. And Wild Form allows them to add +2 to run and charge rolls. So this model is very much a utility, and you're able to choose a spell that might best suit you each round.
Yeah, and each has got hidden strength to each of the cities, so you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and then if you're from Hallowheart, you can take an additional spell. So all of a sudden, these 80-point heroes are double casters. Yeah. Even if they're not from Hallowheart, 80 points a utility. Sorry, 90 points for a utility. Points, yeah, 90 points for it used to be 80. 90 points for a utility wizard. It's pretty decent.
Bloody hell.
And a great adjutant.
A wonderful adjutant. That's a really good point. So I often run my Free Guild General with the Battle Mage, and they're obviously supporting each other. So I'm getting a command point on a 4+, as well as the retinue, which is probably protecting my hero as well. So
yeah, no, they're amazing. They're really good.
Hayden, what's some other choices from yourself?
It's not the greatest hero, but I really love the Shadowblade's Assassin. They can be set up in units of 5 or more, and then at the start of a combat phase, you can reveal them out of that unit, and they've got 6 attacks that on a 6 do D3 mortal wounds. They're just cool little units like that. And then when they're your general, you get to have Shadow Warriors as battle line. So.
Yeah, and I know when we get to talk about units, Shadow Warriors are definitely a fan favorite of this book.
Oh yeah, definitely. don't
Hayden, any other? Yeah.
And there's always the good old Frostheart Phoenix as well. They're still really good. That -1 to wound bubble is still amazing. And they're still a good like toolbox hero. They can deal out damage. They can take a hit. They can hold up units. You know, just Phoenixes in general are awesome.
Yeah. Lee?
So I'll go, if we go, I'll go with a Warden King. And just to say what he does there. So it's only 5 wounds, but again, now we're talking about retinue. Suddenly you got another lease of life on him. He's a 3-up save, which we can always use things to make that even better as we're getting going. He's quite tanky with a 4-up, 4 attacks, 3s, rend 1, D3 attacks. But what I like about him is his command ability, which is Ancestral Grudge. And what that does is that you pick a unit it's within 18 of himself, and then all dispossessed units have +1 to attack against that unit. So we have, when you build in an army around that, you have range units. Sorry, because this is only for melee, but things like hammers, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, suddenly become a lot better. But he also has an additional battle shock thing, where if he doesn't move, he provides a battle shock, a no battle shock bubble that goes around him. And that, if you're a dwarf heavy build, just takes, it means you can spend your command points on more aggressive tactics. So yeah, so I'm a big fan of the Warden King. So yeah,
great.
I was going to say, if you're talking about other ones outside the book for the whole of the cities, you can't really go past the Knight Incanter as well.
We'll get to those. Yeah, we'll get to like Stormcast, those other ones later. But yeah, things like a Knight Incantor, and yeah, there's a lot of cool heroes that buff the cities. I'll call out the. Pardon?
Durthu.
I mean, you can talk about Durthu, we talk about Lari, we'll talk about the Lord Ordinator, we talk about, like, there's so many choices. We'll call out some of our favorites soon, but I think we should talk about the book first. I'm going to call out the Sorceress. Now, the Sorceress is another spellcaster, really which surprised Anthony. You like spells. But why do we like the Sorceress? Well, she's not going to get the benefits from the Hurricanum because she's not a collegiate arcane. But what she's able to do is pick a friendly Darkling Coven model within 3 inches and essentially stab it in the eye, stab it in the foot. You're killing your own dudes. But what happens is if you kill one of your own dudes, you're actually getting +2 to the cast roll. So all of a sudden, when you start thinking of Hallow Heart, you're getting plus up to D6 for the command point. Then you're adding +2 from stabbing your own dudes in the eye. Then you're getting pluses here and here. All of a sudden, we start getting into +20 territory. Rolls of up to 20. So some pretty nasty type rolls. She's got some pretty cool spells. She's got things like the Word of Pain, which within 18 allows you to do D3 mortal wounds, and then also subtract -1 to hit from attack rolls to that unit. So it's a nice little debuff as well as a damage dealer. So, and I think she's only 90 points as well. She's quite cheap. She's 90 points. So again, low cost wizard, and very much functional in all of the cities, especially if you're not even going Hallow Heart and you're looking to get a plus to your cast. Having a +2 to cast in any other city, Hammer Hall, for example, could be a nice way to get a little bit of magic in your army.
A little bit more reliability, isn't it? So
for sure. So you really need that screaming bridge. You really need those swords. You really need gemids that go off. Getting that +2 to cast is a nice little safeguard, especially with a lot of the spells going off on 6s and 5s and 7s. That +2 can really make a difference.
Yeah, That's a great choice. I think the only thing to highlight there is the additional cost there is to get that benefit. You're then having to take another unit that she can actually stab in the eye.
Yeah,
and they have to be Darkling Coven. They can't be. Yeah.
Anything else, it has to be that Darkling Coven. So that's not why I brought some Dark Shards this week at all.
Nah, never.
No, I like the models.
I'm talking about.
Right.
Hayden, bring us home. What other heroes do you like?
Hero wise, the Black Art Fleet Master is still really good. He's a really, really cheap hero. And again, because of the way the book works, making stuff your general makes different things battle line. So like taking him and then making him your general, and suddenly all of those lovely Scourge Runner chariots are now battle line. Not cheesy at all. Definitely thematic.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And we will talk about the coolness that is the chariots. Lee, what do you got for me?
So what else can we go through? I suppose if we're going more, if we're coming down into smaller cities and looking at builds there, we're going to have to talk about the Rune Lord, and just for the prayers that they give. And we talked a little bit earlier about it's the most reliable prayer because it's on a 2, and there's no damage for like some of the Khorne priests, where if you roll a 1, they take mortal wounds. So there's no effect going through there. Again, a great adjutant in Grey Water Fastness. It's having that second prayer that's providing the +1 to hit. But outside of that, it can either pray to give a 6-up save. So if you think of that along with the Luminarch, suddenly your shooting unit at the back has 2 additional 6-up saves. And it can also give +1 to rend to dispossessed units. So when you really need it, you've got blocks of 20 Longbeards. Suddenly you're making them have +1 rend. So it's another utility piece that sort of dictates which way you're going to build your army, which is different to things like the Luminarch and the Hurricanum, which fit in nicely to anything.
Nice. A couple of other quick ones that I'll call out. The Cogsmith. Now, the Cogsmith is not something that I would add in most of my armies, but certainly if I was running a Grey Water Fastness, I'd be taking a Cogsmith. And the reason I'd be taking that is with the War Machine. So there'll be some synergies we'll talk about very soon. It does heal D3 wounds to a War Machine each hero phase, which is not really enough to write home about unless your little Cogsmith's running up the board with a steam tank. But otherwise, it's certainly a nice little support piece for your War Machines. The other one that I was waiting for Hayden to talk about, but I'm going to steal it now anyway, is the Anointed on Foot. And the reason the Anointed on Foot comes into play is, 1, your Phoenix Guard become battle line if the Anointed is general. Second of all, the command ability allows you to re-roll wound rolls made by friendly Phoenix Temple if they're wholly within 12. So
that's on every Anointed, so including the ones on Phoenix.
Yeah. So if you're running like a couple of Phoenixes together, you could apply the command ability and all of a sudden you're re-rolling to wound. Or if you've got an Anointed on foot and they're running around supporting a block of Phoenix Guard, that is a nice little combination that we're starting to form. So for 100 points and Phoenix Guard becoming battle line is worth its weight in gold.
Yes, it is.
I suppose the last one I'd like to say is just the Nomad Prince. When you first look at him, he's not great, but he's not terrible. But it's the bird attack that's particularly good on him. I'm just going to get that up there. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the Matt Gammy personified in a model.
I have no idea who that is, but I don't think I want to go drinking with him if this is what he's like. So it's a harrowing bird of prey. So in your hero phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 16 inches of this model. Until the next hero phase, you subtract 1 from casting, dispelling, unbinding from that model, and subtract 1 from hit rolls from attacks made from that model. And that's an ability, it's not done on a roll, it's just whether they're in 16 inches. It's such it's what draws that a particular model out of the book for that, the little bits like that. Obviously, if you think about the living city, you can make sure you're within 16 inches of that unit you want to debuff. So it's it's a really good ability in an otherwise meh unit, because his other command ability only works on the Wanderer faction, so it's very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that bird attack's really nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that have changed from the old rules when it comes to the Wanderer stuff, with specific things only affecting Wanderers units now.
Yeah.
Like the Sisters of the Thorn now only affect Wanderers units, but
So
they also dropped 90 points though. So
yeah, but Eternal Guard went up. So
yeah.
yeah.
I was just looking at one of the questions from the chat. I don't normally acknowledge the chat that often in these streams just because it could sidetrack our conversations, but they've raised a really good question, and that is, can you use an allied hero to be a part of that the general's little homie group? Is it the adjudement? Essentially the wise council. And I would argue at this point that absolutely you can bring in an allied hero because the ruling says you pick one friendly hero to be his homie. So being that an ally would be a friendly hero, absolutely you could do that. So that's how I would acknowledge that. Yeah, the adjutant. Yeah. So I would argue that the adjutant absolutely can be an ally as much as a hero in your own army, due to the wording.
Yeah.
Changed my mind.
Done.
FAQ my mind.
FAQ my mind. Only other, I'll call out the Free Guild on General, on Griffin, on General, Free Guild on General, Free Guild on General. It's like, little horsey. He's not as good as he used to be. So if you used to play the Free Guild General on Griffin, he used to be pretty good. He's gone up a little bit in this particular book. He can't take the sort of judgment, so he's not hitting as hard because he doesn't have access to that particular realm. However, he really comes into his own in some of these cities that have either movement shenanigans or combat shenanigans. So Hammerhall, it's absolutely a staple in that list. Tempest Eye, I'm thinking, what else? Potentially Living City, Phoenician are all good places that the Free Guild General on Griffin could go. And his command ability allows them to bring it up. You can add +1 to hit rolls made by melee weapons wholly within 12 of the generals. So if you start thinking about Demigriff supporting that Free Guild General on Griffin, and then the double pile in from Hammerhall, or the +1 to its armor save from Tempest Eye. So all of a sudden that 4+ save goes to a 3+. You add the movement from being a base move of 15, add +3 to that, so it's moving 18 in its first turn.
You've got the shield.
Pretty good.
I used him an awful lot in the old Tempest Eye because he was amazing because he was self-contained. You could just send him off. I'm having a bit of trouble with him in this at the moment because of the points increase. You just need that little bit extra. So I think you're right where it can be a cornerstone in quite a lot of armies, but you have to start building towards the strengths there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, and the limitation on artifacts does change it a little bit, but it's still it's probably one of the tankiest heroes we have, especially one of the most combat heavy focused heroes that we have. Certainly the Phoenixes are another example, but they're probably you too. The chat's also calling about the Steam Tank Commander. I see no world that I'm taking the Steam Tank Commander unless I want to take Steam Tanks as battle line. I'm sorry to say that, but it's a very, very cool narrative hero, but a very the randomized movement. The command ability is quite cool that you can pick an enemy unit and you get to add pluses to attack it. There's some other things you can possibly do. The chat's calling out that you can bring them into the Living City. Could be a great particular model to sideboard with. But then you would argue what's better, Hurricanum, Luminarch, Alarial. There's lots of different options. But hey, sideboarding steam tanks is kind of cool, and it's got some long and short range shooting. So the steam gun could be quite effective as much as the long range cannon.
Quietly coming through the trees.
Yeah, I think we saw Ben Johnson doing that, like the sneaky, quiet ambush of a steam tank. So, and you know, you add the thermal out of cloak to it, and you've now got a flying steam tank with +4 to its move.
Yeah.
I think you hit on a good point there when you're saying there were a lot of similar units that can do the same kind of job, just slightly different, and it depends on what kind of flavor that you want in your army.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, the steam tank has a base save of 3+. So again, you put that in Tempest Eye, you're getting +3 to move, +1 to save. You've got 2+ battle line that are rolling around. And they've got some ranged weapons, as long as the long rifle's 30. The steam cannon is 30 as well. So you've got some really long range shots, but the randomness could mean that you are going super fast or super slow. So depending on how risk adverse you are, but man, it's an awesome model.
Yeah.
Cool. Elf Bro, I need you to talk one more hero for me.
One more hero, mate. I'm running out. There's not very many.
The assassin.
I've already talked about the assassin.
Did we?
Yeah.
All right. Just want to make sure we talk about the assassin. All right. So we talked about everything. Have we talked about the Dreadlord on Black Dragon?
No. He's
really good, hot garbage or awesome?
He's not
hot garbage.
Yeah, he's not hot garbage, but he's not as good as the Dragon Lord from the Order Draconis. So you can still give him his shield, which gives him +1 to save, puts him to a 3+ save. He's still got his lance, which is really, really cool. Rend 2, damage 2 on the charge. And then the only thing that lets him down is that noxious breath. That's the only thing that I just can't get over about that model.
What does that mean? Well, for the purpose of people who don't know the War Scroll?
The noxious breath is you pick a unit within 6 inches, roll a dice for the number that's equal to that, and on a 6 it suffers a mortal wound. So it's very, very, very short range. So
you can take the shield and you're making him more survivable and things like that. I think he's good, and he's definitely got a role in some armies.
Yeah.
But then you're looking at the command ability as well, and because that only benefits friendly Order Serpentis units, again, you're starting to have to highly invest in a whale of pay.
Yeah.
But I've heard like people talk about you could give him the crossbow and then he can come in from the side on the Living City because that's got a 16-inch reach.
Yeah.
Then you're getting in and you haven't got a very survivable dragon. So you're doing that initial punch, but then what?
Yeah.
But I think this is definitely, again, like we talked at the beginning, it's going to be one of these models that we'll probably see in the 2nd or 3rd generation of lists when people start finding, oh, I need something that can do this or do that.
Yeah. So again, right now, this is the way we're looking at the world. Doesn't to say that, one particular model is better than the other. There are some situations that maybe a sideboarding steam tank is the way to go. But right now, this is kind of how we're seeing the world. But your synergies and your combinations may dictate that something is better or worse. An anointed is not as great if you don't have Phoenix Guard. So just some things. So overall, we've got some pretty good hero choices. We've got some combat ones. We have some support characters. We have some small wound heroes. We have some large wound heroes. We have some shooting ones. We have some magic casters. We've got a bit of everything. We have a lot of choices when it comes to heroes. I think the question is always going to be which ones to do. The hero choices we have are quite generous. We have nothing really above that 300 mark. 320, I think, is our most expensive heroes. So some choices.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Should we talk about battle line or just units in general? Because holy shite, not only do we have Bleak Swords, Dark Shards, Dread Spears, Eternal Guard, Free Guild Crossbowmen, Free Guild Guard, Free Guild Handgunners, Iron Breakers, Longbeards, We also then have battle line Charybdis if you're Anvil Guard. You've got Steam Tanks battle line if your general is a Steam Tank hero. War Hydra's a battle line under Anvil Guard. Then literally the second page is nothing but potential battle line if you are Pistoliers and Outriders, a Tempest Eye battle line, Hammerers if your general's dispossessed, Phoenix Guard if your general's Phoenix Temple, Flagellants if your general's human. There's a lot.
Oh yeah.
Let's do the same thing. Let's talk about some hero choices, so some unit choices, why they're good, why you want to add them, and if potentially they are better in one particular build than other. So, Lee, you want to kick us off? Where do you want to start?
Longbeards. I'll start with Longbeards. So dispossessed unit, normal Longbeards, 110 points. Things that have changed from last time, from the previous rule set, was that you could have a re-rollable save if you didn't move. That's now changed, so you can move, you can run, and you still get your save. So by taking, they have a 4-up base save, but by taking shields, you have a 3-up base save. What I really like is the change into the Grumblings. But the Grumblings were little additional things that you did in your hero phase. So you get to choose 3. One of them is any dispossessed units in a little bubble around them get to reroll wound of 1, which is great because that could save you some command points. The other one was they added 1 to bravery, which is a bit okay. But the one that I really like, which I think makes Longbeards particularly playable now, is they get to dispel 1 endless spell in the hero phase. And when you start layering that on what we know about endless spells from Free Cities armies, that becomes very, very useful. So so for instance, if you have a pendulum that's out and you've already moved it in between rounds, you've gone over, you've tagged Marathi with it, you've done some wounds, suddenly you can dispel it and then recast it again to do some extra wounds. So it just gives you a lot more flexibility going through that. They used to have a problem with movement at 4 inches, but like I say, if you go in Tempest Eye, suddenly you're moving them 12 inches in that first turn quite easily. If you go in Living City, you can pop them off the side, and then you're getting the charge roll with their +1 from their banner is suddenly an 8-inch charge, and you're going to have 20, 30 guys that make an amazing chaff screen right up in the face. So a lot of battle line within cities are relatively similar, but they have these little bits that add to them, and I'm a big fan of the changes. When the rules first came out, I was a little bit taken back with losing the reroll saves because that had always been a staple. But I think this is actually better because it takes away the movement problem.
Yeah.
I can't see a world where anyone is going to struggle to fulfill their battle line choices in this army, because it's literally it's incredibly hard not to fill them. So it's a great call out. Hayden, what's one from yourself?
Mentioned it like 30 million times already. My other favorite unit in the book is the Scourge Runner Chariots. They are super cheese. They used to be hot garbage. They're now amazing. They are 60 points each. They have 6 wounds. They move 12 inches. They have a 5-up save. They have a Ravager Harpoon, which 18-inch range, 2 shots, 3s and 3s, rend 1 for D3 damage. So on a 60-point unit, you've got 2 shots at 30-inch threat range for D3 damage. And if you roll a 6 to hit on those shots, they do D3 mortal wounds instead of normal damage. Yeah.
That's nasty.
Yeah. First list I wrote with this book had 12 chariots. Yeah. Yeah, I'm that guy.
So the chariots can be taken in units up to 3.
Up to 3, yeah.
Do you recommend that people take them singularly, or do you recommend taking them in blocks of 3, and why?
It's very dependent. I like taking single drops. specifically for overkill. There's so many things that do lots and lots of damage now that if you take single units, they can only ever do a maximum of 6 wounds to that unit. So if you take them in multiple, there's a potential 18 damage that they can do. So if you have someone that goes in and then they have to make a choice. If you have 2 or 3 chariots next to each other in single units, they have to go, okay, well, I have to split my attacks to kill these 3 units. Whereas if you have 1 unit of 3, they can just put everything into that 1 unit. So, but if you do go on a unit of 3, they do get a Beastmaster, which has +1 to hit on the missile weapons. But you go in something like Tempest's Eye, where you can have a command trait which allows you to reroll wound rolls of 1. And there's lots of things that you can do to just make these kind of just absolutely killer shooting heavy lists with these chariots. And they're super quick.
So quick. They do get a unit discount for being in 3s as well.
Yeah, which is 150. So you're saving 30 points if you take it in 3s. But
so you could take 1, and they could be harassing, scoring objectives really early on, or you could take a block of 3 and they're clogging up the board, they're doing some damage.
Yeah,
they serve different roles.
Yeah, that's
utility.
Yeah, they have a lot of different things that you can do with them, and they come on a big base as well, so they're really good for screens. But that also is, again, when we're talking about that double-edged sword, if you end up playing duality, where you now have those little boxes in each corner, you're going to struggle to deploy your army because you've got to try and fit a bunch of chariots on big bases in 2 little squares.
Something to consider. So yeah, that's a good call, and I know a lot of people are talking about those chariots. I'm going to call out one of my favorite units in the game, which is the Free Guild Handgunners. Now, they are short range. They've got a range of 16. The hero can take a long rifle, which is a 30-inch range. It ignores that particular hero model ignores the Lookout Sir rule, so it can be quite good to character snipe and do some damage, especially at 30. You can run them 2 different ways. Certainly, you could run lots of small 10-man units and really maximize that long rifle and get a bunch of them, or you could run a block of 30 or 20. Now, the reason I absolutely love this unit is they have a rule that's quite unique, and 40k players know it as Overwatch, where essentially if a unit charges you and it ends a charge within 3 inches, you can get to stand and shoot before combat is initiated. So your whole unit can shoot, and either, I've played against like a Maw Crusher and taken it down to half strength, or an opponent learns you've got that rule and like, I don't want to go that way, and they kind of avoid that stand and shoot rule. So they hit on 4s, wound on 3s, but it's very, very, very easy to get them down to hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, especially if you've got that Free Guild General on foot. And there are some cities that allow you to get +1 to hit, +1 to wound, rerolls, a whole bunch of good stuff. So the Free Guild Handgunners don't get no regiment discount. They are 10 for 100, but at 300 points for 30, that's a very good screening unit that can pop out some damage. It's just that 16 inches that you're not going to get 5 turns out of them. Very rare.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I suppose for no one from me, I'm struggling. These are one of the units I'm really struggling with, and I want to like them, but I can't make them work at the moment, and that's Eternal Guard. So before the Cities books came out, Eternal Guard were 10 for 70 points, and they got bonuses for for standing still. So they were great little units for just holding objectives. They've gone up to 130 points now, so it's a massive increase. First up, and I really want to try and find a place for them in the army, but like with so many cheaper options within Battle Line, it's quite tricky. But what I like why I keep looking back at them is they have a 4-up save, which isn't particularly good to start with. But if they don't move, they get a 3-up save. So if they don't move while they're in cover, that's suddenly a 2-up save. They have 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, no rend, 1 damage, but a 2-inch range. And again, if they haven't moved, they're getting +1 to, I think it's hit and wound rolls. Yeah, +1 to hit and wound rolls. So they're actually giving back there as well. We talked about Sisters of the Form earlier, that you can make battle line, but I'm not sure why. Unless you're going along this, or they have a spell that can target the Eternal Guard that will give them, will make that unit like it's in cover, even if it's not. So suddenly you're getting quite a survivable unit, but you're having to put a lot of points in it to make it that way. So I want to make them work, but I don't think that they're just an interesting unit at the moment to go through from that. You do get a unit discount, so I think they're 130 for 10 or 330 for 30. So that 30 block just won't go, but it's a big investment because, as we all know, the game is a lot of it's quite a lot of movement. So yeah, but it's just it's an interesting battle line unit, and I'd love to have them in my army. I just can't find it at the moment.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, I guess I'll talk about the other unit that we've banged on about a little bit, which is Shadow Warriors. So so they're 110 points of goodness. So much like the living cities, you can put them off to a board edge. Except instead of coming on a board edge 6 inches in, they can set up anywhere on the board 9 inches away from enemy units, as long as it's before the 4th turn. If they're not deployed at the start of the 4th battle round, they're destroyed. But when you can set them up anywhere, you can set them up in cover, and when they're set up in cover, they get +1 to hit and wound rolls. So normally they hit on 3s, wound on 4s, rend 1 for 1 damage. So setting up a unit of 10 or a unit of 20 in cover that are then hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, rend 1 for 1 damage at 18-inch range, it can get quite nasty. I like running MSU units of 10 in my lists. Generally, I'll have 4 to 5 units just for objective play. They just remind me so much of Chameleon Skinks and stuff like that, where, like we said, Sigmar is a movement-based army. If you can just pop up anywhere on the board 9 inches away and kind of just shoot off a unit, it can just play havoc with people. It makes people screen the entire board, waiting for these guys to come on.
Great for stealing late game objectives, to character snipe, harass flanks.
Putting a screen far up the board for if you need to just stop something. It's worth knowing that they're only battle line if you have a certain general. Yeah,
Shadowblade's general, which is an assassin.
Would you take them if they weren't battle line?
Yes, I would. I like taking them as battle line because I like actually setting up an assassin inside the Shadow Warriors.
Oh.
Yeah, because you can. So you can then set that up off the board, bring them up, and then put the assassin out from them.
I think as well as there is a defensive use for them as well. So you're playing your turns, you suddenly realised you've made a big hole. While they're better going for objectives or trying to snipe that hero, they do give you the ability to try and cover yourself if you've left a gap or suddenly you need to be at the back of the board. I played a game at the weekend where I dropped them on the 12-inch line because that's where they were needed. But you have that flexibility to use them however you want.
And that movement is key. You play a knife to the heart where it could be really hard for you to get to a back objective. You're playing Scorched Earth where there's 8 particular objectives, and there's one that you really want to claim because your opponent's gotten a bit too aggressive. You can go steal it. You want to snipe someone off Duality of Death. There's so many good uses for it, and just popping them in that terrain piece is solid gold. So you can see they are absolutely fan favorite.
I say keeping armies at the back of the board. We hear a lot of talk about just shoot off Slanesh, but they always have that one hero tucked away right at the back. Suddenly you've got a way of reaching out against Zinch, and they can't leave you a little space anywhere. So
big block of Daughters of Cain. You got a little Hag Queen at the back of Hagnar Witch Elves. You've got so many armies that have this quote unquote Death Star. Even my Moon Clan Grots or my Gits. It's a big block of 60 grots with a bunch of heroes at the back, and you've got fanatics in the unit. Well, it can pop the hero out without even engaging those grots.
So I'm currently running 2 units of 10 and a unit of tree revenants, and that keeps your opponent honest the whole game. Because if they leave a little gap, you can drop in behind them. If they leave a bigger gap, you can put all of them behind them or wherever you need to.
Yeah.
So it's just a way of trying to force those mistakes.
Yeah, especially when we can take lots of units and then suddenly go, here's 50 models near your objective on knife to the cart that are going to shoot at you. Good luck.
Yeah.
And like we said, in some armies, you can then charge.
Yeah.
With extra bonuses. So.
Yeah.
I'll call that some human choices. I can't go past the Demigryph Knights. For 3 General's Handbooks, these have been hot garbage. They started at 220. I think they went down to as low as 140, and I stopped taking them a long time ago. They are now back, baby. In the Warhammer Fantasy days, they were the tank. They had like a ridiculous save that has returned. So their armor save now is 3+, which is pretty awesome for something that can be battle line if your general is free guild. Combines really well with Hammerhall. So it is very much not only a very defensive unit with that 3+, each model has 4 wounds. So you're getting about 12 wounds for every, for every 3, which is how they come. But while you're taking them, so when they charge, their rend characteristics becomes -2, which is pretty good. They have a whole bunch of attacks, not only by the Demigryph Rider, but then also the beaks and talons from the actual mount. And they do some serious damage as well. And then you can start combining them in Hammerhall to double pile in. And top of that, you can also, they combine well with the general on Griffin to get pluses to hit. So you could really get them down to 2s and 2s or 2s and 3s on essentially 6 attacks per model. So the rider has 3 attacks each, and then the mount has 3 attacks each. So a lot of attacks being on very, very low dice rolls. And then you add that double pile-in or the pile-in at the end of the combat phase for a command point from Hammerhall. And they are an amazing 180-point unit. Take three blocks of 6, or very much like a Kernoth Hunter build where you probably take 2 units of two 6s or a block of 9, and very, very hard to shift at that 3+.
You're getting away from that idea of battle line as tax, aren't you?
Yeah,
absolutely. This is very much, I think a lot of people have wanted to build cavalry type armies, and the choices for cavalry are very minimal. This is one that you could really build and have it supported by potentially Pistoliers or Outriders. You could have them supported by Sisters of the Thorn. You could have them supported by Caradron Overlords and Engine Riggers. So you could have a very fast mobile army that traditionally hasn't been around for those order forces. So if that's your theme, obviously Hayden's talked about the Scourge chariots. That also could be a nice little support piece. I am waiting for Hayden to talk Phoenix Guard. I'm going to let him have that one.
Yeah,
I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be generous on that one.
I'm literally got it up waiting.
Yeah, I'll be generous on that one. And you guys you ignored me, so I'm going to take a second one, and that is going to be the Pistoliers. Pistoliers are a nice little harassing unit. They're 100 points for 5, 2 wounds each. Why I like them is that they can re-roll their run and charge rolls. They can also, when they charge into a unit, they can also shoot. So essentially, they shoot in the shooting phase. They can then charge and then put some shots in as well. Lee talked about Tempest Eye and being able to run and shoot. So all of a sudden, you're getting some really nice combinations. And these are types of units that you don't run at the center of the board. You're running and harassing on the flanks. And if an opponent focuses on a 100-point Pistolier unit, well, that's good for you. If they're ignoring them, they're on the flanks, you're shooting, annoying them, and you're also winning. So 100 points well spent on a unit that can move 12, let alone Tempest Eye adding +3 to that.
Yeah, so that's battle line just for Tempest Eye, and like you said, they're very, very good, and they have a lot of utility. And I think the key to using them is what you target. Like if you're thinking about if you go play the Zinch army, they will clear horrors and things like that quite easily. Whereas you put them into something with a decent armor save, then they're not going to do as much damage, but they get that second shooting to do a bit more, and then they've tagged something up. So yeah, they're I like them better than Outriders, but the Pistoliers, yeah, I'm a big fan.
Well, one thing I will call out is they do have Rend 1, so that's a nice little combination. And I always enjoy running them with the Demogryph General, the Griffin General. So adding those benefits because they're fast enough to keep up with the Demigryphs and the Griffin General. So the Frigga General and Griffin. So nice, could be a nice little speedy combination of points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. You want to go into the Phoenix Guard?
No, you do it. I'm going to refill my water. You take on Phoenix Guard.
Yeah, righto. So Phoenix Guard are probably the premier, I guess, screening unit in Cities of Sigmar. They are movement 6, so they're your average movement. They've got 2 attacks each at a 2-inch range, which is amazing because they're on 25 mil bases. So they're fighting in 3 ranks. 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, Rend 1, 1 damage. But the thing that makes them amazing is that if they're wholly within 12 inches of a Phoenix Temple hero, they do not take battle shock. And on a 4-up, they shrug a mortal wound or a wound that they take. So you can go, cool, they've got a 4-up save, they take a wound, they still get their 4-up shrug against that. And they can fit into pretty much any of the cities as just a good objective holding unit, especially with the Life Swarm getting empowered. You suddenly have a Anvil unit that barely dies, and then when it does die, you're then getting bonuses to bring them back anyway.
And they gave them Rend. They gave them Rend.
Yeah, they're Rend 1. Yeah. They still got the 2-inch reach and they have Rend 1.
Yeah,
and
they were amazing before, but now that Rend, it makes even the fluffiest gamer go out and buy several boxes of Phoenix Guard, I hear.
Yeah, isn't that right, Anthony?
That's a narrative.
Yeah. Is that Liam narrative? Or
yeah, I think Liam's rubbing off on me. I did buy a block of 30 Phoenix Guard, but I did go through the effort of converting them to be free guilds. So
the one downside to them though is they are 160 points for 10.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the mass regiment discount, which brings it 30 for 420. Yeah. When you think about keeping them alive, you probably want the Emerald Life Swarm. So you're really looking at a 500 point unit, let alone having the caster to cast that spell. So it's a big investment. So you need to make the most of that 500 odd points.
And having an anointed in range as well, so they're not taking battle shock. One thing that I did see in the chat, which is a very, very good point, is that they are also the premier choice for a retinue, because you're passing off on a 4-up onto the Phoenix Guard, and then on top of that, you're then getting their 4-up save and 4-up after save.
I can't do that in my list just because the retinue can only be up to 20 models, and I'm taking them at 30. So if you are taking the Phoenix Guard at 30, it doesn't do the retinue, but absolutely anything up to 20, it's a wonderful choice. Good call.
I take 20 in my list.
Yeah. And like I say, with the cost of them, they're already starting to build a way that you're going to play. They're dictating the style because, you're doing the big unit and then you're going to take the anointed and then you're already started down your play style path by when you've decided that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so many ways to make them tougher, whether it's what I said about the simple spell of like Shield of Thorns and they take damage when they charge, you pop a Frost Phoenix around and causing it minuses to hit, you bring them back with, an Emerald Life Swarm or a Luminarch giving them an additional 6-up save. This is the ultimate anvil.
Yeah.
Like this is an ultimate anvil. And the reason I'm taking it, just for clarity, is my Hello Heart list is very much a spellcaster list. And because those wizards are very juicy targets, if they break through that battle line, the game's essentially lost. Those individual models and wizard wagons won't hold up. So you need that defensive anvil. So that's the role that they're playing in my force.
Yeah. And that is a very good role they play in any of these City of Sigmar armies.
Yeah.
The one downside is now
Yeah,
they're brave. The one downside is that they're bravery 7 now. Yeah, no, they're fine. I was gonna say that they will get absolutely minced by the catapult from Bone Reapers, but they're not affected by it, so that's fine.
Okay. If you're happy for me to go with another one.
Yep. And by the way, like we don't have to go through every unit. If we're like Dark Riders are hot garbage, we won't talk about Dark Riders. But there are some really good choices, and I think as we start building either the Duarden, the Human, the Tempest Eye, the Wanderer, some of this stuff becomes stronger than others. I think we've talked about earlier, but I think you should start thinking about like these are the roles that I need, or this is the types of things that I need my army to do. I'm lacking in movement, so Shadow Warriors or Phoenix Guard or well.
Yeah. And this sort of builds into that is that we said before that a lot of the units, there'll be like a human version, an elf version, a dwarf version that all do a similar role, but with a little bit of a tweak. Yeah. And when the book first came out, I heard a lot about great swords, and they're all 160. Now, the one I want to talk about, the ones I'll talk about is the other version, which is hammers. And why I find not executioners anymore, because we stole all their good rules. I see hammers I think can have a role as a really good counter-attack unit. So they're 140 points. The base stats are 4-inch move, 1 wound, 2 attacks, 3s, rend 1, 1 damage. So pretty okay. You can fight in 2 ranks, so you're getting them in. What they do have is that if they're within range of a Duarden hero, they don't have to take battle shock, but they have the exploding tax that sword masters and executioners used to have, but this is done on a wound roll of 6. So on a wound roll of 6, they're taking an additional mortal wound. But when you start layering in things from the cities, so we talked about the Warden King earlier, being able to point out a unit and giving +1 attacks, suddenly they're on 3 attacks. There's a spell in Tempest Eye that gives them a 4th attack. So suddenly you've got a 140 point unit doing 4 attacks each, so 40 attacks, 3s, rend 1, damage 1, every 6 to wound is a mortal wound on top of the damage. So suddenly they start getting quite good. Quite good. Like I say, as a counter attack, not as to push it out, but when you talked about if they get through your screens and into your backfield, then suddenly you can sling this unit into them and it'll do a lot of damage. Yeah.
I was just saying, and likewise, the great swords play a very similar role where they're hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. If they're within 18 of a general, they get +1 to hit, so automatically they're on hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s. If they roll a 6, an unmodified hit roll of 6, they're doing a mortal wound in addition. So they're definitely playing that role of a damage-dealing infantry unit that you might don't want to spend too much on the Phoenix Guard. You definitely don't want the dwarf version of this. Especially they can take advantage of the free guild hold the line, or other human kind of rules. This is an equivalent to what you've just said. So depending if you're going the Duarden, the human, or the elf, there are some core cheap battle line and then some elite forces.
Yeah, and your choices may be aesthetics, or it may be points driven, or like the difference between hammers and great swords is one explodes on a 6 on hit, 1 on wound. That might make a difference depending on the buffs that you're able to provide. So yeah, it's a common theme through the book that there are units that do the same sort of roles, but just with a little bit of different flavor each.
Great point. I'll call out the Free Guild crossbowmen. So they play a different role to their handgunners. So they don't have that Overwatch stand and shoot if they're charged rule. But what makes them quite good, and certainly something that's worth your time, is they are 100 points for 10, so the exact same price as a handgunner. But the benefits are is they have a 24-inch threat range, so their shooting attack is a lot longer than the handgunners. If they don't move, they get an additional attack. So that means they could be shooting twice. So if you think about that in the living cities and they're coming on the side, you're using the Soul Screen Bridge and you're bringing them up and I guess teleporting them across the board. That doesn't count as a move. It counts as a setup, which means that they still get to benefit from that +1 attack. So they're hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s. But if you do that in the hero phase, there's a good chance you might apply Hold the Line from the Free Guild General, bringing that down to 2s and 2s or 2s and 3s. So it's very easy to get, we watched Tom Morsley at Blood and Glory teleporting a big block of crossbowmen around. You could be doing 60 shots, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, and then teleporting them around the board. So if you think about that damage output, that's crazy good. So Living City and like a Soul Screen Bridge, or even Lockie the Uber driver, moving them around, taking advantage. Yeah, taking advantage of the setup piece. So crossbowmen and the 24-inch range is something that the handgunners just don't provide at 16 inches. So
yeah, that's good. Just so many options.
And then that's a beautiful thing. I need some shooting. I need something with rend. I'm going the handgunners, or I'm going the crossbowmen. But then I look at what the Eternal Guard are doing versus what the Duardin could do. So lots and lots of utility, and just finding that right tool and those right synergies.
Yeah, and if your local meta changes quite quickly, you're not scrapping a whole army. You're moving around a couple of units.
Yeah,
absolutely. Any other choices?
So speaking of moving around units, another good, very interesting unit in Living City is the Sisters of the Watch. I really like them. I can't seem to fit them in my lists, but I really want to. So they have one wound each. They're 5-up save, so they are quite squishy. But they have 1 shot each, 3s and 3s at 18 inches. If the roll was a 6, it inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to damage. Once per turn, if they get charged or a unit finishes within 3, it can shoot. So it gets that Overwatch. And as long as there's no one within 3 inches, they also get an extra shot. As long as they didn't move, sorry.
So great Living City, great Soul Screen Bridge example.
Yeah, I think it's another example of that, the elf version of the handgunners, essentially. And the unfortunate thing, I think they're about 160 points. That is the problem.
Yeah, they're a little bit more expensive, but unlike the handgunners, these guys do mortals. So that is the other, I guess, benefit, but it is only on 6s. So. Yes.
Some other quick ones I'll call out is Sisters of the Thorn, which are the ladies, the wizards on their little deer antelope mounts. The Sisters of the Thorn are a good introduction into Hallowheart. Because they're a caster, so they become a double caster. They've got high movement at 12. Something that Hallowheart traditionally lacks is movement, so it's a nice little objective stealer and can start casting around the board. So that's a nice little unit. I don't know if I'd add them in many other other cities. And a lot of the buffs that the Sisters of the Thorn add from their spells are only relevant to the Wanderers, so their particular crew. The other I'd call out really quickly is the Flagellants, who are another really cheap battle line option. They do some damage there. And if you're looking for something like the Phoenician, where you want to sacrifice bodies to get benefits, these guys not only do some good damage output, they have a very low armor save, and when they die, they can throw themselves back and do some damage at their opponent. So, and then obviously then you start triggering your Phoenician rules. So Flagellants might be a nice little battle line or a nice little screening unit to plug into what could be a very expensive army with Phoenixes and Phoenix Guard, which are probably going to take up a lot of your army.
Yeah. And it's funny because we haven't even talked about any of the Darkling Coven at all. There's so many units.
Is that because they're not good?
They're not great unless you're taking them for a very specific role. And when we talked about the sorceress, we talked about you'd have to take a Darkling Coven unit so that they can be sacrificed to get the +2. The other reason would be that there is a couple of units that are very cheap. There is things like the Dark Shards that do have a high volume of shots, but they're not particularly good shots. So when you're weighing them up against your other options, there are stronger ones that you can go with. But if you're taking the sorceress, you need to take a unit of Darkling Coven to actually get that bonus.
Yeah.
And I think the cheapest one's 80 points. So sometimes it's nice just to feel that cheap benefit.
It kind of goes back to what you said earlier, Lee, about there are lots of different variants of the role type. It's just depending on what you want to go with. So whether it's the Free Guild Guard, whether it's the Dread Spears or the Dark or the Bleak Swords, there are all these similar type roles. It just depends on what are those other hero choices we chose, or what's potentially you've got a battalion or a city that gives you certain rules. There's lots of different variations with their own slight twist.
If we have this same conversation in a year's time, we might be talking about different units as the meta's changed, points have changed, and things that aren't necessarily number one playable units now will suddenly come to the strength.
Yeah.
My only other call out would be the Free Guild Guard, which is the battle line generic swordsman or halberdier or spears. So there's 3 different ways you can build that out. They're quite cheap, 80 points or 280 for 40, which is a steal if you're looking for bodies. They're relatively resilient. If you take sword and shield, they've got a 4+ save. They get the benefits of the hold the line, so they can be hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s. No rend, 1 damage, but for something that you just want to kind of clog up the board and just potentially secure an objective, they are quite good at what they do. But they're certainly not the hammer that you need to break through a defense. Any other call outs we want to make, or do we want to go into maybe some more of these elite units like the Charybdis, or not like the Charybdis, but like they're behemoths. We'll get to behemoths in a second, but we've got some other things like the gyrocopters, the gyro bombers, those non-battle line choices. We've got what have we got?
Drakespawn Knights, Drakespawn Chariots, that Order Serpentis stuff.
So a lot of people are talking about gyro bombers and gyrocopters at the moment, especially the gyrocopters. I think it's an Anvil Guard spell that works really well with this particular unit, but I think gyrocopters are getting a real focus right now. People can see the value on this high speed shooting damage output harassing unit, very similar to the Pistoliers and the Outriders. Lee, anything you'd add from a Duarden point of view?
So I've been running unit of 3. Again, we're going back to functionality. So if you look at them, they are a 16-inch move to start with. And then what they do is they get a shot per model within an 8-inch from them. So if you get them really close, you're going to have 8 inches from 3 gyrocopters. So I played 40 clan rats. They cleared 40 clan rats. So they're very high value against hordes. But they do have, again, we've mentioned it a few times, the ability to go across different roles. So once a game, if they take a normal move over the top of the unit, they can drop the bomb that they have, and that's D3 mortal wounds. So obviously in a unit of 3, that's 3 times D3. So suddenly you'll be able to take out those support heroes, drop a monster down a category, all that sort of stuff. I've also found, because they're a 4 wound 4-up save, they hang around for a bit longer than you think. And in Tempest Eye, that's a 3-up or a 2-up in cover in that first time. So suddenly I've used them as objective holders if I'm playing elite armies, where there's no point in them all flying up to shoot into, 5 secators or something like that, because you're not going to get the damage output and then they're going to get wiped. So actually holding them back to either act as a more expensive screen, hold an objective, or if something does break into your backfield, then you can drop those bombs to try and get that value against those elite armies. So I think that's what I really like, is that they're very good at horde clearing, which everyone is jumping on, but they actually have multi-use, and that's when a unit like this is gold. Absolutely gold. And you get a unit discount on 3, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
Until December. But
only rules change in January. Points will change annually with General's Handbook. So take advantage for the next 9 months.
Yeah. So yeah, no, they're really good, and I can see why everyone's going across the. Again, another one of those units that can fit into any city. Living city. Yeah, the problem with living city is that we've talked about the deep strike, and it has to be 9 inches out, where these shots are 8 inches. But you've got so much speed, and they are quite durable, that you don't need to take them off the board. You can have them hanging back.
So maybe they're the ones that start on the board, and
exactly, because they have that threat range to get through. Tempest Eye, we've talked about the ability to run and shoot still. So 16 plus 3 with the run and shoot, you're pretty much going wherever you want to take out that screen. And that's particularly useful if somebody hasn't got a command point or something like that in that first turn. So you're still forcing that bell shot. But like I say, I like I've been using them as objective holders until you need to do those D3 damage on against elites, which isn't, nice way to play them.
Yeah.
So, I suppose I should say that there are 2 different types of gun that you can take, because the Brimstone gun actually has a 16-inch range, which is 3 attacks, 3s, rend 1 damage. It's fine. Yeah.
But the steam guns are just so much better.
Yeah, when you read the steam gun, you're like, we'll just take those.
Yeah.
What do we have an opinion on the Black Ark Corsairs? It's something that I wanted to talk about. The Scourge Privateers battle line, if they're the General's Scourge. Another kind of big block of up to 40 for the same points as a Free Guild Guard at 280 or 80 points apiece. I like their movement. They got a movement of 6.
Yeah.
Their attack profile's all right, but what I really enjoy is the fact they've got a shooting and the combat, so they're a bit more utility than, say, a Free Guild Guard. And they get some pluses, and they get some pluses to hit or pluses to the save, depending on kit loadouts. So a bit more of a utility, but certainly maybe not as durable. What do we have any opinion on the Corsairs?
I like them just because they do have that variability between the shooting and the combat. It is only 9 inch on that shooting, which is quite short range, but you got 2 shots each. So, and then you got, if you're a unit of 15 or more, you got +1 to hit. So you've gone from 5s and 4s to 4s and 4s, 2 shots each, 9 inches. But if you've got
the Fleet Master
and
a Fleet Master, which is going to add +1 attack characteristics for melee weapons within 12.
Yeah, you can pump out a lot of weighted dice because it's 40. That's 80 shots, 4s and 4s from a unit of 40. If they're going to get shot at, they get +1 to their save. So they're on a 4-up against shooting. There's still a lot you can do with them. They're a really good screening unit, I find. I actually used to use them as a screen in my old Deepkin army.
That's right. I'd say that they're another one that they're going to be that 2nd or 3rd generation of list type unit, whereas nobody apart from you has them lying around ready to go at the moment. And once points change a little bit more, they will start seeing more and more on the board. But at the moment, I think people are playing what they already have, and they already have so many options that hold that role that I wouldn't be going out my way to paint them up quickly. But that will change as we get through.
And they're a great addition if you start going into an Anvil Guard type build. But when you start going into other type builds, potentially there are other units that serve you better. But I think they serve a very interesting role with the shooting and the combat. So if you can start setting up, maybe you give away the first turn, they move close to you, you move up, you shoot, you then charge. You could do some damage within both phases, which is something that not a lot of battle line units can do. So if that's a role that you need filled, absolutely the Black Ark Corsairs could be one for you.
Especially when you put Life Swarm in as well, then you're getting extra utility as well, because you're compensating for the ones that you're losing, and you're still getting those shots.
Maybe it's a good example of the bridge. Maybe we're teleporting dudes around. You bring the hero with them. You know, so you got that command point. If you need to re-roll the charge, they're in range for that 9-inch shooting attack. Then they can charge within range of the hero, so they're getting all the benefits. So that could be a low risk teleport. Another option.
Yeah.
But then the argument is: do you teleport them, or do you teleport a unit Phoenix Guard with an anointed? Or do you teleport a block of 30 handgunners, crossbowmen, or Iron Drakes? So depending on the build, will depend on which one suits the role that you need.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any other call outs from the non-behemoth, non-artillery models?
The other option is the Drake spawn chariots. I think are a really good shout too. In Living City specifically, because they have a shooting attack. It is 5s and 4s, but that doesn't really matter because all you need to do is you need to make a shooting attack. It doesn't need to actually do any damage. The movement 10, but when you charge on a 2+, you do D3 mortal wounds. So you can have a couple of units of 3. That can, they're only singles, so you can just get them come out and just, charge potentially in the turn, do some mortal wounds, So, and they're super cheap as well. They're also a good shout for Phoenicium. But yeah, again, something that's 6 wounds on a big base, super cheap. So good little screens.
Another one that I've seen work really well in Living City is Wild Riders. So they're not a battle line choice, but they're not a little bad. They do some damage. They can hold their own, hit on 3s, wound on 4s, 2 attacks, and then they get some Ren 2 instead of Ren 1 if they charged, as well as damage 2. So if you alpha with them and you bring them on from a Living City or you teleport them, they are a nice little combat unit. And they're on quite small base sizes, so you can kind of manipulate that deployment zone quite well with them.
Yeah, and again, we're starting to get into that territory of same units across the different races and just slightly different variants. But that rend and the charge is really cool.
So they're kind of like the elf demigryph, very different, but they've got some similar characteristics.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And then when you're going into like Drakespawn Knights as well, which I wish was so Drakespawn Knights, which are the elf version of it. Their save is amazing. Their point cost and their only 1 attack isn't. So they have 2 wounds, 10-inch move, 3 up base save. But they only have, unfortunately, 1 attack, which is 3s, 4s, rend 1 damage, and then 2 attacks with the bite, which is 3s and 4s. They do get the -2 rends on the charge, like the Wild Riders, but I think they're 170 points. Which is a lot for 1 attack. But when I first read the 3-up save, like most things, my mind goes back to Tempest Eye when you're thinking, well, that's the 2-up save, so it's a 1-up in cover. Well, these could be quite good. 10-inch move, they're fast, that's great. Oh, they get Ren 2 on the charge, so that's even better. It's just 1 attack. 170 points. So unfortunately, they do a role that you want, but they go down that pecking order because there's other things that do it better.
Lee, remind me, we've done Iron Drakes, haven't we?
We haven't done Iron Drakes yet.
We haven't. I thought we had.
Do we want to?
Iron Drakes are amazing.
Let's finish off with Iron Drakes, and then let's get into artillery and behemoth. So, I know, Elf Bro, you really want to talk about them, but you are an elf, so let's let the Dwarden.
You told me right when this book dropped, you said you didn't like dwarves, so there we go. So Iron Drakes, great unit, changed a little bit. So they have 1 attack each. They're 4-up save, 4-inch move. Their 1 attack is a 16-inch shot, which is, I'm just going to get the stats up. Sorry.
3s and 3s, rend 1 damage.
There we go. He knows it better than me. Shame. But like we talked about earlier, if they don't move, they get an extra shot. So that would be 2 shots each, 3s and 3s. the captain of each unit gets to take a torpedo, which is a 20-inch shot. Same stats pro, but a Ren 2, and it does D3 mortal wounds, or D3 wounds, sorry, unless it's targeting a monster or hero when it does D6. So again, if we're not moving, we're doing 2 shots that have the potential of doing 12 damage just on their own. And then when you start for 150 points, they're great. They do have a +1, an extra plus to the save against shooting units, which is different from the old rules where you used to get rerolls and ignore rend and things like that. So they're great on their own. They get even better when you start stacking the quite easy buffs that we can all get. Hurricanans for a +1 to hit. Long beards, but
a +1 to wound, whatever it is, or reroll 1s to wound, or whatever it.
Reroll 1s to wound.
Yeah,
and then you can start putting things on like Hawkeye that gives you a +1 to wound as well.
Yeah.
So they're starting to get very good. The only thing that is a disadvantage is that you're losing that second shot if you move. So you're again edging towards taking things like the bridge, where you're bridging them up halfway to get, because that's a setup, not a move. So you're still getting that second shot. You're in within range, and then you've got a decent save, especially if you've got a mystic shield on them to try and survive their counter attack.
Can you give them the Ren 2 from the Rune Lord?
Yes, you can. So that's another prayer that you can put on top. So you can start buffing them up quite nicely. So
they get very scary very quickly.
Yeah. So it just depends on like 16-inch and 20-inch range. But then when you start actually adding those extra layers, they get very good. It's probably the only unit you want to, when you come in on Living City and you take those shots, that you actually want to move the other way. We've talked about like Turfu and shooting and moving into a unit. These you want to shoot, and then you're actually trying to get away from that front line, trying to create a bit more space. But like I say, they're tanky as well, really tanky.
I've also been told that you need to correctly use their name of Grudge Hammer Torpedo. So
you can fly 24 hours from wherever you are and come and tell me.
All right. Well, we got the torpedo. They're kind of like the middle ground between the handgunner and the crossbows. With again the dwarf twist. So
they're a great unit. They're 150 points. It's just trying to find. And one thing as well is on there you can take them as battle line for a Dawarden hero. So not dispossessed hero. It's a Dawarden hero. So that only becomes quite interesting in Tempest Eye when you can actually have a KO hero as your general, and then he will make these battle line
because KO is Dawarden. So
so he will make they will make them battle line in that unit, and it's an oddity when you look on the back page of it where it's very specific: dispossessed, Dawarden.
Another thing I think about is the Greywater fastness, and when we get to the battalions pretty soon, the Greywater fastness battalion requires you to take a cogsmith. So if you've already got to take a cogsmith, that is Dawarden. That could be the general if you're not going down the Rune Lord or even the KO route. So or even Fire Slayers. So lots of things to consider. I know Fire Slayers are an ally. Fire Slayers are an ally. They're not 1 in 4.
I think you also get +3 to their range as well. I think. Oh, sorry, don't mind me. I'm just going to check something up.
All good. While you check that up, I'm going to acknowledge two of the 2 artillery pieces we have. One is the Hellstorm rocket battery, which is sensational. A slight change to the War Scroll from prior to this book. It used to be able to ignore line of sight. It now requires line of sight. Why we love this particular model is it because it has a 36-inch threat range. Put it into a Greywater fastness, that is a 39-inch threat range. Each of them has 3 attacks. In Greywater fastness, you can make them attack twice in the first round. Put a cogsmith, put a Lord Ordinator in, put a Hurricanum in. They'll be basically hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, or wounding on 3s. Ren 2 for D3 damage apiece. So if you think about 6 shots, get 4 of them. And in fact, in Greywater Fastness, you could take up to 5 artillery. So you break the rules of the traditional 2,000 point match play rules. Although you can only have 4 in the battalion. That is a huge salvo that is going to destroy Keepers of Secrets and, big battle lines, and, you can obliterate an opponent in that first opening salvo with that 39-inch threat range per piece. So the Hellstorm rocket battery and the combination that I just mentioned at the Lord Ordinator is quite an expensive one, but man, does it pack a punch. On the flip side, you've got your volley gun, the Hell Blaster volley gun, which is more of a shorter range. I think it's got a threat range of between 12 and 24, depending on those 2 threat ranges. The attack kind of changes a little bit. So it's nice if your guys are kind of advancing and you don't, you want to bring the War Machine with you. A change that's happened in this book as well, which is a really important one, is that in the old book, War Machines and the crew were 2 different war scrolls. They are now a combined war scroll. So the total volley gun, the total rocket battery has 7 wounds, as opposed to sniping out the 2 or 3 crew members that it used to have, and you've essentially lost 180 points. So volley gun, I think, is a bit hard to justify compared to the rocket battery. But if you're looking for some firepower that advances with your force, I think the volley gun is still worth a look into. I wouldn't write it off, especially if you're adding +3 from the Greywater Fastness.
I think the minimum range is the only thing that worries me on the rocket launcher. Is that if something gets in, then it's quite. I think is it 9 to 10 inches?
6. I'll bring it up. I think it might be.
It is 10 to 36.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything gets within 10.
That's quite a big, especially when we're in a game with lots of teleporting units that can come out 9 inches away,
or something.
Or chameleon skinks or anything like that. You can shut things down that way. So that's just the one thing that I was worried that would worry me, that you'd need to actually make sure you've wrapped them well.
I think I'd be worried as well as if Sylvaneth's throwing down some wildwoods. With all those line of sight blocking wildwoods, all of a sudden your threat ranges are almost null and void. And to do that combination I just mentioned, the 4 rocket batteries plus a Lord Ordinator plus a Cogsmith, maybe even a Hurricanum, you are well into the 800 to 1,200 point range, battalion or no battalion. So that's a lot. If you get matched up against the Sylvaneth or something that's called, casting palisades and blocking line of sight, or even, as you just mentioned, being able to teleport within 10 and you can't do anything about it.
I've got an Ordinator that I'm painting up anyway, because like I say, it's just, and it's how you're relying on that you're relying on that very, very good first turn.
Oh wait, that's not an Ordinator.
So they're great.
For the Drakes as well. I just rechecked what I was looking at was salvo fire from the Greywater Fastness. They're included in that, so they get a +1 to hit from a command point.
Amazing.
Just with the Hellblaster volley gun as well, it is only 24-inch range now, but you do get +1 to hit if you're within 12.
There was 2 different rules if you're 12 or 24, and it's the plus to hit.
So 3d6 shots, if you have an Ordinator, it's cool, well, I'm within 12, 3d6 shots, that can get real scary hitting on 2s. And
you can re-roll the amount of attacks if you have an engineer, an iron-willed arsenal engineer within 3 inches, which is your Cogsmith. Which is all of a sudden you're now pumping out 2d6, 3d6 per attacks that are hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, Ren 1 for 1, and then you add some buffs and we bring in that down, and holy shit, that's a lot of damage. But it's very, very, very random, as the chat's calling out as well.
And you've got to get past, and it's how many rounds as well you're going to get of it, and how much you have to invest because then you're not going to move that far to be able to get objectives. So you're really counting on that massive blow of damage.
Yeah. The thing as well, though, is with that, I know we're going to go into the battalions, but the firing twice in the first turn in grave water fastness. So you're potentially getting, 6d6 shots from each guy?
In the volley gun?
With the volley gun in the first turn at 29-inch range. That's that's a lot.
27.
Even
and then movement. Yeah.
Yeah, and movement. Like that's a lot of shooting from these things. Even with the randomness, it's a minimum of 6. So
if you have a cogsmith or 2 and you can re-roll those dice, you have a hurricanum, gives them +1 to hit. All of a sudden, that is a lot of damage.
That's another +1 to hit. Yeah. In the first battle round is just you're taking off a lot.
Yeah, so. the rocket battery isn't an auto include. I think Lee, you mentioned earlier, there's those 2nd and 3rd generation iterations. I think you'll see volley guns become popular over time. But I think rocket batteries right now, as we have this meta of, the Slanishes of the world, which are really wrecking facing combat and people don't want to get in that situation, the rocket battery solves that problem. So, but know that the volley gun is not rubbish and there's value in it.
Yep. I think when the book dropped, these were the lists that everyone was talking about straight off the bat.
Yeah, but you do have to invest into
heavy investment.
Well, you also have to invest into heroes that are going to remove this randomness as much as possible. So know that these volley guns need cogsmith. You probably need 2 of them, and there's going to be a battalion and stuff. So just some things to think about.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, in saying that though, the rocket batteries took off a unit of 30 wounds of Chaos Knights in just over a turn. At Runax. Yeah. It's a lot of damage.
It is, but again, you play against Sylvaneth, they block line of sight, you're doing a whole lot of sweet nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, so, pretty much. That's what Palisade did.
Yeah. Or a Palisade as well. You throw up a Palisade, you block line of sight, and you just keep advancing with a Palisade, dispel it, bring it back.
Yeah.
You want to wrap up the list building with some behemoths, and then we'll kind of start tailing and customizing with spells and artifacts.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have, from a behemoth point of view, we have the unheroed Hurricanum, the unheroed Phoenixes, both the fire and the frost. We have the unheroed Luminarch. We have a Charybdis, which is also battle line in an Anvil Guard. We also have the Steam Tank, which is also battle line if your general is a Steam Tank hero. We also have the War Hydra. So I know my co-host, the Filthy Liam himself, is absolutely obsessed with the War Hydra right now. I'm going to start off with talking about the Luminarch without the hero. I think that laser beam, a double laser beam, has merit. Although when you look at the Luminarch, it's 210. With a hero, it's 270. So it's a bit hard to justify the unheroed version. But taking 1 or 2 of those with its laser beam, especially in a living city or maybe something with a fast movement, you can do some real damage with that laser. And then obviously adding the +1, so the 6-up ward save. Lee?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think the justification for taking Luminarchs and Hurricanums without a wizard is just a point-based trying to squeeze that last one in. And that pretty much is the same thing that you're going to talk about for Phoenixes, is that if you've got the points, you're going to take the Phoenixes with a hero. If you haven't got the points, you may consider taking the Phoenix. I like the fire Vice-Versa Phoenix, but it is not anywhere as good without the anointed on top.
100%.
Yeah. And I think that covers them all. And to be honest, I haven't looked at the War Hydra or Charybdis.
Because they're still hot garbage.
Because they're 170 points.
Yeah. Having a look at them, the Charybdis is really good for a bravery bomb. It's just at this stage in Age of Sigmar where we look at it and not many things are taking battle shock at the moment. I don't see the point of bravery bombs as yet, until we start seeing more, I guess, less ignoring battle shock stuff or less just CP farming where people are just going to, cool, I'm going to inspiring presence that, so it doesn't matter about battle shock. War Hydra, on the other hand, I do think has a lot of merit. Both of them, if they kill... the Charybdis, if it kills something, heals D3 wounds. The War Hydra doesn't need to kill anything. It just, at the start of your turn, it heals D3 wounds. Both of them have the potential to charge on 3d6. The Hydra has a shooting attack, which, when it's undamaged, 6 shots, 3s and 3s, rend 1/1 damage at 9 inches. And they do a bit of damage in combat. 6 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1 rend D3 damage with 6 attack at 2-inch range on the Hydra. I still don't think they're very good, to be honest. They're okay, but there's much better things in this book that you can take for those points.
I would argue that the steam tank is probably the only. Maybe the Phoenixes, maybe the Frost Phoenix, and the steam tank are probably the only 2 behemoths you would take without the hero. But if you had the choice of taking a heroed Phoenix, you would absolutely take the Frost Phoenix with Anointed every single day. The steam tank, you probably don't need to buy the hero for it. I think it acts independently. But the rest of them, you take the Hurricane with a hero, you take the Luminarch with a hero, you take you take most those behemoths with a hero, unless you need a Charybdis or a War Hydra. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I've written lists where I've taken a Flame Phoenix without a hero on top, specifically for the reason that it can come back on that 4-up, and it's 200 points. So
I've got the same, but then you're like a 4-up in.
It's just it's a random bonus. It's more so there for the mortal wound output of moving over stuff. But then if you're going to do that, you might as well take it as a hero.
If you can find that extra 100, if you can find that extra 100 points, you're able to reroll charges with a command point. You're able to get the 4-up additional save. There's just so much more. Put an artifact on it.
If they had the same number of attacks as the cold version of the Phoenix, sorry, words are hard after midnight. Then I'd consider it again at 200 points. But it's 200 points on a 4-up, and it hasn't got the same amount of melee attacks, so it's not. It's just those little bits that are coming. I think 200 points is definitely puts it in consideration. Definitely. I think it's in my playing around Living City list for CanCon this year, or next year. So we'll just see how we go.
Some things to think about.
Yeah.
Before we get into battalion choices, battalion choices, we have a whole bunch of allies or not allies. So you've got your allies, which is Daughters of Cain, Fireslayers, Deepkin, KO, and Sylvaneth, except Carriage and Overlords can be one of those 1 in 4 choices for Tempest Eye. Sylvaneth can be one of those 4 choices for Living City and Greywater, and Stormcast can be 1 in 4. So these 1 in 4 choices that I'm talking about don't count to your ally choice. So you can take 2 or 3 Stormcast units and they're not an ally choice. But Daughters of Cain, Fireslayers, Deepkin 100% have to be an ally. So let's talk about our 1 in 4 choices first. Let's talk things like Stormcast. Is there anything from a Stormcast point of view that you'd call out? Again, such a big book. Obviously, there's a lot of choices at a high level. Anything that stands out and why?
Ordinator, for obvious reasons that we've already talked about.
So our war machines.
Yeah. I actually was looking at a Knight Templar in a couple of lists. So the not Celestin Stardrake, I think could be quite interesting in a few different lists.
I've seen someone run a double Stardrake list in a Anvil Tempest Eye. So,
he has a bow as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. So that's why I was like Living City. Plus you've got Rain of Stars, which is technically a shooting attack as well. So you can just go, cool, I'm going to Rain of Stars, and then I'm going to move.
Yep.
So lots of different cool things you can do. The other one is you can the good shout is always those, what is it, the long strikes?
Yep.
As well. And for anything that's shooting heavy and not a Zeros, reroll 1s to hit.
Yep, but it also works in combat as well, so that could be a
also
nice
works in combat as well.
That could also work in a nice Hammer Hall list. Lee, what are your choices from a Stormcast point of view?
So Incanter, a Knight Incanter is the first one that goes across all the cities. It's a good wizard with a great save and an Aura Dispel.
And we take the Knight Incantor because he also essentially comes with a.
Are you talking about the Comet?
Everybody's Comet, yeah.
yeah. I actually think there's a place for the other endless spell that no one used, the Flying Disc.
I used it last weekend and
cool.
never bring it back.
That's it. I quite like it because it will keep up with the rest of Tempest Eye and a 2-up save everywhere you go, which becomes a 1-up. It depends on the packs as well that you're playing. If there's like a rely on heroes staying around, I think they're for 140 points. The Incanter's a great option. Playing around with Paladors as well at the moment, because of the durability, 5 runes apiece, 4-up save, but they have the ride the winds, so you roll 6d6 and you can move that far, and it's treated as fly, so you're jumping into backfields and things like that. So playing around with them as a sort of holding unit, particularly in shooting heavy lists that I'm riding, where they can get quite far up the board and then try and hold or screen something for a couple of rounds while you're getting all that shooting in. So I think there's a good shouts there. There's always the Prime. So
the Prime is just a really good movement. Yeah.
I know you have a love-hate relationship with it, and it is 340 points. So
I still find it's just too many points for what he does at 340 points.
I think it comes down to what you want him to do. Is at the end of the day.
Yeah. A few others that I'd call out is the Lord Arcanum on foot. I ran him the other week. His command ability allows you to move an endless spell an additional 6 inches. So from a predatory point of view, it's very cool to throw swords a lot further, or other particular innocent. Purple Sun's another one. I would call out potentially the Kitty Cats, the Dracolines. Could be a really good choice in Hammer Halls. Nice supportive unit with your Demigryphs. Your Azeros is always, don't leave home without one. The Evocators could be really nice in a Hallowheart army, considering they're spellcasters, so make them double casters and they're quite durable. What else? There's so many cool choices in Stormcast. I think the challenge is just
the book's as big as the cities book, so you're pretty much looking at 2.
You might take the ballistas. That could be a nice support for someone who doesn't want to take the rocket batteries. But again, there's just so many choices. That's something to think about. What about, let's say, Sylvaneth? Let's say we're going to go into Living Cities or Greywater. I think there are 2 obvious choices, at least for me. Actually, no, there's 3 obvious choices for me. I'd be curious to think what you guys think from a Sylvaneth point of view.
Obvious choices for me are Trade Revenants. Another one is Drycha, and another one is Durthu.
Interesting. You acknowledged one of my 3.
Yeah, I'd go with those 3 as well.
Okay, so you both are Sylvaneth players. I haven't unwrapped my book yet.
Alariel's too many points, and in Living City, her base is actually too big to fit her on a board edge. Durthu is really good because he can come on that board edge, shoot, charge. You can give him artifacts that give him, I think it's +1 to his save, so he's rocking a 2-up save, getting in combat to smack in face. And then Drycha has the 20 shots doing mortal wounds coming on a board edge. Then she can move in, and then she can do combat, and she's a beast in combat as well. Lots of different things that you can do with those 3. And Tree Revs are just a good shout because they're just pretty much Shadow Warriors, but with a 6-inch pile in instead of shooting.
Yeah, I'd also say Kurnoths have a place.
You're starting to go into big blocks again. So Kurnoth bows, I think there's better other shooting units now in this book, so you're not going to spend your money on them.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at swords and scythes. I'm a big fan of swords. I think they're great, and the new book gave them extra buffs with extra mortal wounds and things, but then they're quite slow again.
Yeah.
And you're not, if you want to get woods to start teleporting around, you can't. You have to take, you can only get the one from the tree lord.
True,
You need, you're bringing in a tree lord and the additional points that you need to factor in if you want to go down that route.
Yeah. So and there are other units here that can do that role in that sort of army if you're going along that. I think just to highlight as well that one great lore bit in this book, from someone who doesn't read lore, was that you can't take Sylvaneth as allies for grey water fastness at all. So even though they can't take the 1 in 4, they can't take them full stop because the blue thing. So tree revs, I think, fit in every army, and they'd fit great in particularly in grey water fastness, where you can blow big holes out of somebody, but you're not allowed to take them.
Yeah. So you have to plug that hole with Shadow Warriors instead.
The only other thing I was playing around with was trying to see if I could get a battalion from the Sylvaneth book, like a household, but it's expensive quickly, and you're taking a normal tree lord, but you're taking tree lord, tree revs, and the branch revs, but then you're adding extra points, and then you've also got to take 12 units to get your 1 in 4. So you start running out of space and points and utility quite quickly.
Yeah, I'd agree. What about our KO? If we're going to go KO either in Tempest Eye or as an ally, maybe even if it's in Tempest Eye, what comes out? Is it your Arcanauts? Is it your Engine Riggers? Is it Brock?
Chemist?
Yeah, Chemist, Company, any of the flavour of Balloon Boy that you talk about. Is
this the general we're taking as well as Duarden?
Yeah. So within Tempest Eye, if your general gets an ability called Hawkeye, which is +1 to wound, so on shooting attacks.
Yeah.
So what you're looking for there is that you could have a Arcanaut company around the general. They're hitting on 4s and 3s that become 3s and 3s if you're targeting a hero or monster, but then it's suddenly 3s and 2s, and then a Hurricane makes it 2s and 2s. So you start racking up those buffs nice and quickly.
Have a whole bunch of skyhooks.
Yeah, with the skyhook range. The range is on the first turn can be up to 36-inch threat range from an Arcanaut company. The one that I'm quite interested in, and while it lasts, is that with Sky Wardens, with Sky Wardens with drill cannons, you can you do additional splash damage on a hit roll of 6, but with that, a wound roll of 6, but with that Hawkeye ability, that becomes 5. So you'll be doing your D3 more damage to a unit, and then you'll be doing an additional splash of D3 to a unit within 3 inches of it on a 5.
It's a modifiable 6.
It's because the KO book still hasn't been updated.
Exactly the point.
Yeah, so you're taking it's quite expensive as a deal, because you're taking a unit of say 12 Sky Wardens, which is 400 points, plus the Chemist, which is 140. But you're then taking 4 of the drill cannons, 4 of the rapid fire weapons, and then 4 sky pikes. But at that long range, you're doing Ren 3 D3 damage with the splash going off as well, and you're making those shots better in count. And then you have a unit that has 24 wounds with a high mobility to go and get those objectives and play through the game and move to the shooting that you want. You might start losing your buffs as you move, but you're hoping that you have things like Thermal Rider, Cloak to put on your Chemist to try and keep him up with them. There's a lot of things there. With the Engine Riggers, again, because you're in Tempest Eye, they'll have the city keyword. You can add an extra attack with a spell to their melee. You start off with a saw that has 1 attack, 3s and 2s. You put the Chemist buff, makes it 2 attacks. Then you put this extra spell on, and all of a sudden you've got a unit doing 3 attacks each, 3s and 2s, do 3 damage at Ren 2, I think it is.
Yeah, and you can give one a grappling hook to get across the board.
Always give 2.
Yeah.
So you're moving a long way. Unfortunately, I think they're the 4 units that stay out in KO. The Grunstock Thunderers are good, but they're quite slow, and you've got such variety in that sort of mid-range shooting that you take Iron Drakes instead. There's a points variant.
It's probably something you don't need.
Yeah.
We've got some other actual allies, which is the Daughters. We've got Fire Slayers, and we've got Deepkin. Do we need any of them? Do we think that there are roles that these guys fulfill that we don't have in our book or can't get from Stormcast or other units?
There's always roles. Defensive eels. Attack eels. I don't think work so much because you're a points value, but the defensive ones, I think there's definitely a role for them. In some of the army builds at 140 points with that much movement.
Any cities that it better suits?
Grey Water Fastness is a good one because you're going up the board 12 inches and then acting up a screen further up to allow you to get that extra round of shooting. But it can fit in, if that's the role that you're trying to do, it can go to any of them across. You were talking about your Hammerhole again. Magic Cities, trying to protect your backfield, they can do that. And also for 140 points, you can sit them at the back and you can get them where you need to go quite quickly later game. There is options. You are gaming a bit at this level because there are units in the book that can do it. So you're specifically taking them because they're better than what you have in the book. So it's a gaming choice.
Yeah, and that's what you need to get out of this if you're going to bring them into the book, because they don't gain they don't gain the city keywords because they are allies. Fire Slayer's Daughters, is there anything in there that is possibly worthwhile? Hayden, I know you're a Daughters player.
If you're going to take Daughters, play them in Daughters. They're better there.
You wouldn't take anything like a Canary. You wouldn't take
taking 5 life Heartrenders might be a good shout, but
kind of plays the same role as Shadow Warriors, right? Like, do you need Canary versus Shadow Warriors?
Yeah, Canary are good because when you drop them down, they do the Ren 2, but like, they're not. They're a lot more. Yeah.
The major benefit is that you can drop them in round 5.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Yeah, but that's a big deal though against Shadow Warriors where you're dropping in round 3.
But so then you take tree revs.
Yeah, you take tree. Tree revs have the ability to block out more screen, but you're having a 9-inch charge. Where if they're with the Canary, you're dropping them down because you on a 4-up you get to move again.
Bit dicey in round 5 to rely on a 4+ for a charge. I see where you're going with it.
It's the same thing with the tree revs though, is they get to re-roll 1 dice per phase anyway. So making that 9-inch charge is a lot easier with the tree rev as well, because you can potentially re-roll the 1 dice or you re-roll both dice if you've got a hero in range.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that there are some choices, and really, we've got access to about 5-6 battle tomes. If you think about our own battle tomes, the Stormcast, the Sylvaneth, we've got so many choices. I think, as Lee's put it out, we're gaming for advantage. We're looking for things that our army just can't do or someone else does better, whether it's the Canaries coming down in round 5 as opposed to the Shadow Warriors who have to be on the table for round 4. If it happens to be the Eels and they're a defensive screen that's superior than something else we've got, I don't know, the Demigriffs, we're finding something that is just a little bit better. But again, our toolbox is so deep and there's not a lot of things.
Yeah. There is one ally that we haven't spoken about.
Is it who I think you're going to talk about? Is he worth like 500 points?
Bastard.
Yeah.
He is 500 points.
Actually, no, we haven't talked Fire Slayers. Before we get into the fake Fire Slayer.
You can't fit 30 Hearthguard into a unit under 500 points, so it doesn't. Fire Slayers don't matter.
Stop. We got Fire Slayers. Is there anything in Fire Slayers that's worth taking, Lee?
With the restriction on the ally points, no,
Okay.
because you're relying on the buffs. Because you're looking at the tank. It may possibly the Berserker, but he's too slow. I like if you're going for someone who's just going to carry on chopping, but no, I don't think so at the moment, because the Fire Slayers rely on that mono build, and I think that when you take them out of their allegiance, the cities book can match them.
You've got Phoenix. You've got your tanky Phoenix Guard. You've got other things that can play that type of role.
Magma drafts are not.
You've got Griffins. You can get Star Drakes. You can get.
I don't even think there prayers that you'd want badly enough to put in their endless version to put in there. So no, I don't think so. And if the prices start coming down, then that again might be second, third generation list sort of stuff. But I don't use them well enough myself to be able to put them into a list.
Hayden, you want to talk about Gotrek?
The only thing that I may put in is the Auric Hearthguard, so the shooting Hearthguard, because they get the -1 to hit bonuses against monsters, and the extra damage and all that kind of stuff.
Would they be superior than, let's say, an Engine Rigger?
Yes, no. I guess Engine Riggers are still better. They just got 18-inch range on their shooting.
How many
the
points?
Shooting no idea. I don't play Fire Slayers.
And to be honest, if I want really long shooting, I think we talked earlier about our
you
our
can
long
take
strikes.
Iron Drakes.
We even take long strikes, and they don't count towards an ally pool.
The Hurricane crossbows are interesting as well, especially if you take Aether Wings with them. That's a really good combo that you will never. You'll see the Aether Wings and the long strikes, and you saw them in Sydney GT because Sean ran them a lot and he's running for ages and done so well. But you never see the Hurricane. I've never seen the Hurricane crossbows with the Aether Wings, but I think that actually works really well in cities, because you've got that multitude of shots coming out, like 40-odd shots a turn, and then you have that bird unit just to come out in the charge phase just to block it to get that next round of shooting, and that would work out at about 190 points. Or if you take your 6, you're laughing then, and you can start working with bridges and things like that to make it better. And those two units go really, really well together. And the Aether Wings are great for holding objectives, blocking out gnaw holes, or going for late game objectives. Backfield, 12-inch move, they're great.
Awesome. Let's talk some battalions. Let's get into the home stretch, and let's talk about customizing, funneling, and letting Lee go to sleep, because it is it's like in the AMs in the Shire.
Yeah.
So each of these cities have a War Scroll battalion. I'm going to read out the rules, and let's do like a yay or a nay on what we think. So the Hammerhall one is the Lancers. You've got to take a Hammerhall Free Guild General on Griffin, and then 3 to 6 units of Demigryph Knights. What it allows you to do is add +1 to the hit and wound roll for the attacks made by the melee weapon, if it charged and is wholly within 18 of the general. So when you combine that with the double pile-in, when you add that in with the additional buffs, you are potentially double piling in with that Ren 2 lots of attacks. Do we think that is worthwhile?
Yes.
I've heard a few lists with this in it already.
Yeah, I think we've seen Jack Armstrong running like 18 Demigryphs with his list. So if you want to go down that route, Lee.
It's one of those great battalions that feeds into the style that the list needs to be played. So you're already going, by choosing this city, you're already going down that route. So it actually makes your choices stronger without having much of attacks.
Yeah.
Yep, and all of those Demigryphs have a banner, so you can get that 1 in 6 or that 6+ chance to get an additional command point. So it does reward you that way. We've got the Living City, which is the Pathfinders. You've got to have a Nomad Prince, 3 units of Wildwood Rangers, and 0 to 1 choices of Wild Riders. That allows you to add +1 to your charge rolls for friendly units from the battalion. if they're being used to be set up on the side of the board, that the hidden paths. So it's going to make that charge a little bit easier.
No.
Why no?
Because I wouldn't take those units in Living City.
Okay, so it's not necessarily the rule, but it's more that it's forcing your hand on something that you don't want to take.
Yeah, because there's definitely better things you can take.
So the Rangers get get bonuses against monsters, and so you're already going down that way. There are much better choices to take, and when you're in the Living City, you can put so much off the board to start with. You're not as concerned about drops.
Yeah, cool. Greywater Fastness has the artillery company that requires 1 cogsmith and 2 to 4 of the rocket batteries or the Hellblaster volley guns. And for your points, in the shooting phase of the first battle round, friendly war machines in the battalion can shoot twice if they're within 6 inches of a friendly hero from the battalion and they're not within 3 of an enemy. So if we're taking the rocket batteries, they can't be within 3 of an enemy anyway. So I guess, are we looking at a double shooting rocket battery, or to what we talked about earlier about that potentially that 29-inch or 27-inch shooting from the volley gun?
Big yes. This is a big yes on this battalion.
Yeah.
If you're playing Greywater and you're not taking this battalion, you're doing something wrong.
Do you think it's worth taking 2 or up to 4 of those rocket batteries?
Maxing it out's probably a good idea with all the shooting. If you're double shooting in the first turn, you're clearing lots of the opponent's army in a turn with that double.
Do you think it's worth taking 2 of these battalions? So knowing that Greywater Fastness can take an additional artillery piece, so having a block of 3 and a block of 2 and almost splitting it up and having 2 versions of it, or is that too many points going down?
I think that's too many points.
That's a
going
really
down
good question.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. You go, Lee.
Oh no, I'm just visualizing a couple of people I know who are about to math hammer what you just said, and we'll come back.
I guess what I'm thinking while you're math hammering this is to really take advantage of this artillery company. I'm also adding a Lord Ordinator, which is another like 140 points. So if I'm trying to get 5 that full 5 rocket batteries, I'm go double artillery company, I'm probably close to 1,500 points.
Yeah, you have no screens.
You've got 500 points to screen and win.
Yeah.
That would make a terrible tournament list, because you're really going big or you're finishing up. So terrible and great at the same time.
Yeah.
could be a good 1,500 point list. Sorry, 2,500 point list. And someone in the chat, Darker, has mentioned maybe a 2 volley guns. So you mix it up and have some rocket batteries and some volley guns. That could be a way.
It's actually quite interesting to see if it'd be worth it, because like we said about Hammerhole, you're committing to a strategy. So is this actually benefiting that to a point where it makes it much more viable?
I guess Hammerhole is building around your battle line, which will be your demigriffs, while Greywater is your specialist in your heroes, and you've still got to fulfill that battle line choice. So
you're just going for that big first turn, but then
you need to shatter your opponent in that first turn, otherwise you're screwed.
There are too many counters for it. It's an interesting idea though.
If it was like the old rocket battery and you could ignore line of sight as well, I think that would work. But because you require line of sight, there's a lot of risk in that play.
Yeah.
Hello Heart's Whitefire Retinue, which is essentially just 3 to 6 Hello Heart wizards, hero wizards. So that could even be your Stormcast brought into the fold. And what that allows you to do is add +1 to the cast and unbind rolls for friendly wizards within the battalion, as long as they're within 6 inches of another wizard from the same battalion. So you're really going for power pairs. Is it worth +1 to cast and unbind?
Yeah, it's worth taking it to lower your drops, because if you're playing Hello Heart, you're usually taking 6 heroes. I'm guessing you're the person.
I've got 4. If you're doing 6 heroes, that's 12 spells. That's overkill.
Yeah, but you're taking more than 2.
Yeah.
So using that to lower your drops, take extra artifacts, get that extra command point. For it's what 140 points for the battalion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the +1 to the unbind roll. Lee, what have you got for me?
Yeah, exactly the same. You're taking it to lower your drops, but the bonuses there are just great anyway. If you just got those, you'd take them. But with the lists that you're building and the ones that we're seeing, you're doing that to lower your drops.
Yeah.
But it again feeds into what your list design is.
Yeah. We have Tempest Eye. We have the Wild Riders, Wild Runners, sorry, which includes a Tempest Eye Frigate or General on Griffin, 3 to 6 Tempest Eye Outriders or Pistoliers, and then 0 to 2 Gunstock gun haulers. So that allows you units from the battalion can retreat and shoot or charge later in that turn. So what do we think of that one?
I like the rules, but
it's one of those rules and units again.
Yeah, you sort of stop. I think this changes it slightly because I don't think you're taking the Griffin as a lot of the time in this list. The Pistoliers are now great, but I'm not sure if you're really going hard on them. And for the KO unit, we'll see when they finally get a new book. But at the moment, you're not taking those either. So this is the opposite of the ones that we're saying are great, is that here you're having to go out your way to include these for a ability that's nice but not amazing.
We have the Beast Hunters, which comes from Anvil Guard, which includes the Black Ark Fleet Master, 3 units of Black Ark Corsairs, 1 to 3 Scourge Runner Chariots, and then 0 to 1 Charybdis. So they get +1 to their wound roll for attacks made from units from the battalion if they're targeting enemy monsters. So very, very niche, but we have a lot of monsters in the game right now. Is it worthwhile?
It's yes and no, because if you're taking a Scourge Privateer heavy list, you're going to have most of that anyway, and then you're completely lowering your drops. Because there's your 3 battle line choices, a chariot, your hero in there. Plus, if you're taking a Charybdis, there's a Charybdis in there.
Yeah.
So,
The opposite is that you don't actually need the extra artifact either, because there is an ability in there to get an extra artifact just from your city choice. But you just got to balance it out, I think.
Yeah. It's more so about making it a really, really low drop list potentially.
Then putting more chariots in.
And then putting more chariots in, because that's all you do. It's just more chariots.
Finally, you got the Phoenix Flight from the Phoenician or Phoenicium. I don't know how you spell it. How do you pronounce that? Am I pronouncing it right?
Phoenicium, I'm guessing. That's how I say it. But...
All right, let's say it's Phoenicium in Australia. It's confirmed. So you've got to take at least 1 Frost Phoenix, but you can take up to 2, and you need to take at least 1 up to 2 Flamespire Phoenixes. And at the start of your hero phase, you can heal 1 wound allocated to each of those Phoenicium units wholly within 12 of any other from this battalion. So your dudes are healing 1 as long as they're next to each other. Do we like it if you're going down this path?
I like the fact that it's keyword Phoenix. It's not the actual, it has to be the unridden one. So you can have your heroes in there. If you have 1 of each hero running around, they've suddenly got a 12-inch healing bubble for everything around it. So it's good. It's not great, but it's Phoenicium. So got to play it a bit more to really see how it goes.
So, similar idea. I'm really this is the city I'm unsure about at the moment. If you actually need any Phoenixes or Phoenix Guard in it, or if it'll play better using all the other different units. But if you're including Phoenixes, then it's not a bad buff. But this is that one city. This is one that I think can change up, and I think this could be a false flag on what you actually need to take to get the most out of the city.
Yeah, I struggle to see a world where you take 4 Phoenixes, potentially even 3.
And not take that.
Yeah, so that you're taking a battalion for 2 Phoenixes that need to be with each other to heal 2 wounds around. So is it worth it? Other than the artifact and the CP?
Pretty sure they don't have to be near each other.
It had to be within 12, didn't it?
No, they heal everything within 12.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 12-inch bubble
Yeah.
around that Phoenix. I'll just double check that, but I'm fairly certain.
Either way, is it worth it?
Yeah.
I thought, yeah.
Yeah, wholly within. Heal friendly Phoenicium units wholly within 12 inches of any units from this battalion.
Right.
So it can heal things outside of the battalion.
So those Phoenixes are acting as beacons for other parts of the Phoenician army.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Endless spells. Do we have any endless spells choices we'd want to make, or we think is worthwhile in some of these armies? I'm a big endless spell fan, so I'm happy to kick off some of my auto includes.
You go, man. You're the Hammer Hall boy.
Hello, Heart.
I
am Hammer Hall as well, but so things that are potentially auto includes or I don't argue with. So Cogs and Balewind Vortex are a great way to get an additional spell in your list, or Cogs to speed up your army. Maybe you're a living cities and you want to ensure that alpha strike from the side. That +2, it could be awesome. Plus the battalion with the +1, you're going for a 6. What else is there? So Geminids is still a wonderful spell. -1 attack, -1 to hit. Empowering by the realms, you can get a better chance of doing damage. I think Quicksilver Swords is an awesome choice because there's a lot of chaos right now. So your swords are doing 15 dice. Against non-chaos, they're going for 6s, do mortal wounds. Against chaos, they're doing 5. I played a game where I did 8 out of 15 dice did mortal wounds to Scarbrand. So that was pretty good for 30 points. What else? So the Soul Scream Bridge and the Lockie Uber driver, or I can't remember his real name, but
Bodie
McBoatface, the guy who picks up dudes and moves them around, are awesome to teleport guys around the board. And because they're not a movement, you get the setup benefits that the Iron Drakes, the crossbowmen, the handgunners all get to take benefits of. What else is in my list? Comet, if you're taking a Stormcast hero, the Everblaze Comet is a wonderful way to disarm any Death Stars, any hero that are hiding behind the lines. Shackles is a nice little way to kind of pin your opponent or palisade a block line of sight. What else?
Spell Portal.
Spell Portal, especially if you are Hallowheart, is a cracking spell. I'm not a big fan of Purple Sun, mostly because my armies are usually blocks of 30 to 40 dudes, and if that gets back in my face, that could be nasty. So I think I've got more to lose than to gain. Especially, I usually have units with larger model sizes compared to my opponents.
Yeah. You are fixed. There are spells that go for it that are worth the risk. The other one will be Life Swarm.
Of course. Yeah.
One that we don't see much of, but I want to give a shot, is the Shards of Valgar, whatever it is, the laser from Forbidden Power.
Yeah.
Because they have that ability to shackle things as well as -1 to hit, and you're drawing a line between the two models. I haven't seen them on the board as of yet, so I'm keen to have a play around with them and see how they go.
I've seen them in death lists, but they're hard to justify. The one that I want to bring into a list and I can't justify it is that that Necro Wall, the wave, I can't remember what it's called.
Gravetide.
The Gravetide. It's super cheap. It's a wonderful wall. The challenge that I have is it has to be within an inch of the wizard. So which means that you've got to basically have the wizard in your front line to cast it, which then makes it a risk. So I don't like that.
I think if you're talking about combat armies as well, would probably be Maelstrom would be a good shout, just to give those extra unbind things. But they've all got a use. Yeah,
especially with the empowering of the realms that really take some of those from good to great. And some of those spells that you would normally take actually become valuable, like this Life Swarm.
Yeah, unless you roll ones.
Unless you roll once. Well, fingers crossed.
Is that
I don't
right,
roll
Lee?
once.
A lot of ones. It's so annoying. Do you want to just pick out a couple of spells?
That's literally what I'm about to pull up. So we're on the final stretch, and I'm going to pull up the spells. So what I'm going to do is we have all of the different artifact spell choices and things. I want to hear some of our top favorites from each of the cities. So first off, we got Hammer Hall. So Hammer Hall has 3 command traits. We have +1 attack characteristic to generals' melee weapons, plus at the start of the round, you get additional command point. You've got the reroll wound rolls of 1 for melee weapons for Hammer Hall units within 12, and then add +1 to the hit rolls for weapons made by Hammer Hall units within 12. So who make a charge. So I'd probably say the Blood of the 12 is probably the one, especially if you have a Griffin with demigriffs around. So you want to keep them in that bubble anyway.
I'd agree with that. That's the standout, I think.
From an artifact point of view, you've got 3 choices. You've got +1 to save rolls for the bearer. Pick 1 melee weapon, improve the rend characteristic by 1. And while the bearer is near an objective marker, you can do an additional point of damage. And then you've got the Twin Stone, which allows you to either add +1 to hit rolls within 12, or you're able to heal on a D3 wounds on a 4+.
The Twin Stone for me. I think that's, again, it just gives you more options, and that's great.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't charge, I think it allows them to get another +1 to your demigriffs, or you've got like netters and you've got the redundancy.
Yeah.
Hammer Hall has 3 spells. You've got the Fire for Wings, cast on a 6. Pick 1 friendly unit visible to the caster. You can add 1 to the run and charge rolls until the next hero phase, and the unit can fly. You've got Cinder Cloud, which allows you to subtract 1 to the hit rolls when they target a friendly model within 9. So it's a bit of a bubble. And then finally, pick 1 enemy unit within 18, and it suffers D3 mortal wounds, except if it has 10 or more models, it takes D6.
Wings of Fire.
Yeah, Wings of Fire, which is the +1 to run and charge. So again, makes your demigriffs super fast, and it's moving around and flying, gets you where you want to be.
Cinder Cloud's good as well, but Wings of Fire, and again, like we talked about that whole theme, it just adds to the list you're already building.
Yeah.
So well.
The ability to jump over screens with that unit of demigriffs makes them amazing.
Yeah, I would not argue with that. Hammer Hall has 3 artifacts. Did I do artifacts? Yeah, I've done that one. Cool. So that's Hammer Hall done. And again, obviously, there's artifacts that can be chosen from malign sorcery. I think there's some pretty generic ones that people like to pick, but remember, you are landlocked to 2 realms.
Yeah.
Next, we have the Living City has 3 command traits. The first one is add 1 to the save rolls for attacks made to the general, and then add 1 to the wound characteristics to melee weapons of the general. This general can run and charge. In addition, they ignore deadly scenery, which is kind of cool when they're within 12 of the general. Or if they're a wizard, they get to if the general's a wizard, they know all the spells from the spell lore. If they're not a general, they get to pick 1 of the spells.
Yeah, I know Gartisan is my standout in this one.
So you're going the add 1 to the save roll.
Yeah, that's what you throw on a Durthu, and then so then your Durthu's wounding on 2s, and then +1 to save. So it's got a 2-up save and wounds on 2s.
It's not bad. I just like Druid at the Everspring, the spell one. I don't play combat heavy armies, so that one it's amazing.
Yeah, I would lean into that one as well. So either your wizards know all the spells, or you have a non-wizard learning 1 spell, so you're getting a bit more utility. That's certainly where I would like to be. From an artifacts point of view, you've got the Spear of the Hunt, which pick 1 melee weapon, improve the rend characteristic by 1. In addition, the bearer and the mount fights at the start of the combat phase if they made a charge in the same turn. Or you can, if the bearer has characteristics of 6, They can't be chosen as a targeted missile weapon, although if they have 7 wounds or more, you subtract 1 from the hit roll, which is an interesting one. Or once per battle in your hero phase, the bearer can use the horn and add +1 attack characteristics by melee weapons used by Living City Sylvaneth.
Spirit of the Hunt for me. Again, I'm a combat heavy player, so Spirit of the Hunt on a Durthu combined with the Iron Oak Artisan. So you're then having Rend 3 and striking first with Durthu.
Yeah, can't argue with that. It's crazy good. I like the Deep Mere cloak though as well. I like the way of
It does have to be in cover though.
Yeah,
that is one thing that
Yeah, I would agree. If I think I can get into cover, I think that's a cool one. Otherwise, Spear of the Hunt is a great one. Finally, you've got the Living City spells. You've got Life Surge, which gives you heals D6 wounds. You've got the Cage of Thorns, which pick one enemy unit within 18 and halve the move characteristic. In addition, the first time it moves, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. And then finally, you've got pick one friendly unit wholly within 18 and subtract 1 from the wound characteristics that target that unit until the next the hero phase.
All of them, please.
Okay.
I'll take all of them. They're all great. Cage of Thorns is amazing.
Yeah,
which kind of goes back to that druid artifact as well, making sure you can get that additional spell cast in your army.
Well, it's like you put Cage of Thorns on one of the Fect dragons. They're going to move, but they're most likely going to drop themselves down a profile by moving.
Yeah,
the utility of all 3 of them are great.
Yeah. So good choice. Greywater Fastness, you've got 3 choices. You've got the Seat of the Council, which allows you at the start of the hero phase is general. If the general's on the battlefield on a 4+, you get a command point. You've got Drill Master, which you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 made with missile weapons from the Greywater Fastness units that are wholly within 12 of the general and 3 inches away. Or friendly units wholly within 12 of the general can run and shoot later in the same turn. I think the Drill Master's a no-brainer for this one.
Yeah, it depends if you're running steam tanks, you might go the Gulmir. So because you can move, run, and like if you're running steam tank commander and a bunch of steam tanks, maybe Gulmir Ranger, but otherwise Drill Master.
Yeah, and to be fair, the steam tanks are eventually going to get within 3 of an enemy, so you start losing that ability. You've got 3 artifact choices. You've got your Steam Pistons, which is going to add +1 to the save rolls. In addition, add 1 to the bearer's move characteristic. Or you can pick one a missile weapon, and add 1 damage characteristic to the weapon. Or at the start of the first battle round, you receive an additional command point and add +1 to the hit roll made by missile weapons of the bearer.
It depends on your list. This is the first. This really depends on what you're building. I like number 3, where you get an extra command point to start with.
Yeah,
I think that's quite nice.
I like the Steam Piston if you're going for that steam tank army as well.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking if you're taking a steam tank hero, a good choice might be getting that +1 to the save. Otherwise, maybe it's the additional command point if you're more of a war machine, less steam tank kind of guy or girl.
Yeah.
You got three spell choices. You've got your Descending Ash Cloud, which picks a enemy unit within 18. You subtract 1 from the hit rolls made by that unit, or you have the Blast, which is pick one terrain feature wholly within 18, roll a dice for each model within an inch of that terrain feature. On a 5+, it suffers a mortal wound, and then until your next hero phase, that terrain piece is deadly. And then, or you've got Choking Fumes, which successfully cast pick an enemy unit within 15, roll a dice for each model in that unit, and then on a 5+, it suffers on a mortal wound.
Yeah. If you Greywater Fastness, do you really have any wizards?
Unless you might take a Hurricanum. I've seen people talking about Hurricanums in their list. Which in that case maybe it's the Ash Cloud, or it's or even the terrain piece is not a bad spell.
I was gonna say the terrain piece would be a good shout if you do have a wizard. But But yeah,
They're,
once
they're
you
not
start,
bad. There isn't
yeah,
a bad one though. They're all
yeah,
situations like that. Yeah,
yeah,
the eroding blast is good because of the weaknesses we talked about earlier. That if they're all going to try and hug a piece of terrain that stops you seeing them, then suddenly you can attack the terrain.
yeah.
So yeah, they're not bad though.
Yeah,
Even the choking team.
Ashcloud's good. I think there's a so there's a whole bunch of good stuff. Sorry, Ashcloud is grey water. Yeah, so a lot of good choices. But I think to your point, do you have the wizards to get them?
Yeah.
Question mark. We have the Phoenicium, so we've got 3 command traits here. We've got the Seeker of Vengeance, which add 1 attack characteristic to the general's melee weapon. If a friendly model's been slain in the same phase, add 3 to the attack characteristics if 5 models have been slain in the same turn. Or you have the general knowing all the spells from the spell law, or a non-wizard knowing 1. Or you don't take battle shock tests for friendly Phoenicians that are wholly within 12.
Seeker of Vengeance by far. Just because your Phoenix Guard already don't take battle shock when they're in range of a hero, like a Phoenicium hero, bloody Phoenix Temple hero. And before we go on to the spells are kind of so like you're not really wanting to make things a wizard. Even if you are, you don't want your phoenixes because you're generally having a phoenix, your general. You're not wanting to make it a wizard. You're wanting to make it do more damage. So Seeker of Vengeance is
a bit of an auto include.
Yeah.
You've got 3 artifacts. You've got the weapon used improves by a rend characteristic of 1. You have the bearer can fly and still run and charge, or unmodified save rolls for attacks made with the bearer of 6 heal a wound.
The unmodified rolls of a 6 heal a wound, make something that's not going to die, not die even more. So
yeah. Or the get rid of Rend 1.
Yeah. I like that the Seeker of Vengeance is quite interesting on a the general on Griffin. That would be an interesting one to put on there.
But it only affects the guy on top. It doesn't affect the mount.
Yeah, but you could add 3 attacks to his hammer.
Yeah.
Which isn't anything to sniff at, especially again if you're not building a Phoenix list in the Phoenix City.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Originally, I had the idea of building one around a Dreadlord and Black Dragon with Seeker of Vengeance on.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, do we all agree that the Phoenix spell law is not good? The healing D3, subtracting 1 from the bravery of your opponents, or halving the move characteristics of a unit?
It's hard.
Healing's all right.
Healing's all right because it's to each. It's a 12-inch bubble.
Yes,
which is nice.
So you're getting you're getting D3 plus 1 if you got the battalion.
Yeah.
Messing with movement's always good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
there's also
it's
things you can
situational.
Do. Yeah. Yeah. It's just one of those things that you need to have a play around with, still trying to make it work.
Yeah, it's one of those niche lists still.
Yeah.
Anvil Guard, we've got 3 command traits. We have pick 2 benefits from the illicit dealing, so we can now not just take black mount. We can take 3 as opposed to 2 instead of just 1. We can add 1 to the hit and wound roll for attacks made against enemy monsters, or the general knows a spell law, or if it's not a wizard, it knows 1.
I like Black Fan Crime Lord to take 2 different illicit dealings, but I also like the idea of getting extra spells, and you'll see why in a minute.
Yeah, I like the extra spells for these guys.
Yeah.
Right, so we're getting more spells. And speaking of relics, though, we have the cloak, which allows you to negate mortal wounds on a 5. It allows you to do D3 mortal wounds with attacks made with a 6 on top of. Or at the end of combat, roll 1 dice for each unit with enemy unit within 3, and on a 4+, they take D3 mortal wounds. That one's not bad.
Yeah, but that's at the end of your combat phase. It's not each combat phase. Yeah.
No, but it's also each unit, so it could be.
Yeah.
They're all a bit. I guess the cloak is probably maybe the better one. They're ignoring the mortals on 5s.
Yeah.
Actually, it's ignoring wounds or mortals. Actually,
Yeah.
no, that one is the one. Initially, I just read it as mortals, but no, if it's wounds and mortals, give me that one any day.
Yeah.
We've got the curses, which is the acid, blood, the bones, or the gaze. So you can roll the dice, and on a 4+ suffers a mortal wound. You can on a 2+, the enemy suffers D3 mortal wounds, or subtract 2 from the bravery. So something that impacts on charge, something that is going to do bravery debuff, or something that is a wound allocation and negating.
I quite like the acidic blood.
So negating wounds on a 4.
No, you're suffering.
Yeah.
You ping a wound back.
Oh, yes. Sorry. On a 4+, the attacking model gets 1 mortal wound back.
Yeah.
Because your monsters are normally healing themselves as well in between turns, I think, isn't it? D3 wounds they heal.
Yeah.
So,
D3 wounds when you kill something on the Charybdis or the War Hydra.
It's just healing automatically.
Just healing automatically.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Got 3 spell choices. You've got the sap, which subtracts 1 from the hit rolls until the next hero phase. You have daggers, which 1 enemy unit within 9 suffers D6 mortal wounds. And the spray. The spray has been in the chat since second 1. People are big fans of the spray. Although it casts on an 8, which is a lot harder to cast. Maybe that's why we need the sorceress. And then what we do is within 6 inches of the caster till the next hero phase, that unit has a save characteristic of dash.
I think you mean within 6 inches of the spell portal.
Yeah.
Well, yes, in combination of the spell portal. I'm just reading rules as written, but yes, if you have a spell portal, you cast it. Your tanking unit has now a save of nothing.
Yeah, and then suddenly these gyrocopters come along, and look, you're in for a bad time.
Yeah, but we need a spell portal to do that.
Yeah,
it's so good. That spell alone makes me want to try the city. I like it's cast on an 8, like you said. It's very high in the limited range, but if you can make it reliably work, it has potential, and it's just really interesting.
I think you need that sorceress to make it.
Yeah,
and
at least achievable.
Yeah, and then you might even. It depends how much you're putting in for that as well. Like sorceress, then you've got to take some darkling covens and a spell portal. Do you really need to take a hurricanum to try and get another plus, or they won't get that?
No. The hurricanum only does collegiate arcane, so you'd have to take a battle. You'd have to take a battle mage, but then you don't get the +2. So
it's such a good spell, though. I'd love to see how someone will make it work.
Everyone's crying about how awesome this spell is, but I worry about the 8. But the 6 makes it really a 1 in 2.
Yeah. And then I suppose if you've got any kind of arcane terrain as well, if you want, but you're then getting into not reliables.
And that's a lot harder now that we have the 2 tables that we didn't normally have. We had a lot of high chance of getting arcane. Now it's almost rare that I get an arcane terrain piece these days.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Something that I can tick off very quickly, which is going to be Hello Heart. I'm a massive fan of the Veteran of the Blazing Crusade, which means that friendly Hello Heart units wholly within 18 of the general don't take battle shock, which I think is wonderful. I know what's very popular across other people is the famed Spell Hunter, which is the wizard adds +3 to dispels of endless spells. So they use that nicely with the Everblaze Comet to unbind the Everblaze Comet and just keep recasting it at full strength. And they can also dispel one additional endless spell, or you can generate additional command point on a 4+. So I would say the Battle Shock immunity or the endless spell dispel is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the famed Spell Hunter is a bit of an overkill. You've already got so many casters. I don't know if it's worth it, but the +3 is nice if you are relying on the Everblaze Comet. From a relic point of view, you can either subtract 1 from the hit rolls made by melee weapons to the bearer. You can on a 4+, a unit can suffer D3 mortal wounds if they're within 3 of the model. Or what I think is the best one, which is the Witfire Tome, which allows the wizard to know all of the spell laws or making a non-wizard know a spell. So I think I go for that one for redundancy.
Just knowing all the spells, that's amazing.
Yeah,
So
put it
good.
on a Hurricanum or a Luminarch. And the thing is that Hallowheart has 6 spells, while every other city only has 3. So essentially, it knows 6 spells. And if you're giving it to a Hurricanum or a Luminarch, they have 2 additional spells on their War Scroll on top of Mystic Shield and Arcane Bolt. So essentially, they know 10 spells to choose from on top of the endless spells. So if you think about the utility of that Hurricanum Luminarch, it's ridiculous.
Hallowheart privilege.
Privileged life.
Yeah.
The spells are all fantastic. In my opinion, some are more than others. Elemental Cyclone allows you to basically do it on a 4+. You roll 1 dice per model in the unit. So if you got a block of 40, you roll 40 dice on a 4+. You take a mortal wound. This is an Umbral Spell Portal spell every day of the week. The crystal spell allows you to bring that 5+ ignore spells and endless spells down to 4. Seer Wounds allows you to heal D6 wounds, so it allows you to take that damage to improve your casts and heal that up. Roaming Wildfire is kind of like Chain Lightning. It does some damage and then it bounces to other opponents. Warding Brand is awesome. Basically, if a wound is inflicted in melee and it's not negated, on a 4+, you deal a mortal wound back. So nice defense against like a handgunner, a shooting unit that's now locked in combat. And then Ignite Weapons allows you to bring the wound roll down by adding +1. So again, making those handgunners or crossbowmen hitting on 2s and wounding on 2s. So really brings that 2 wound roll down. All great.
Yeah. The crystal one is just amazing. Making it a 4 is just so good.
I take a lot of redundancy. I make sure that I've got multiple people who can cast crystal, multiple people can cast spell portal, multiple people can cast certain spells. So I like to build redundancy in my list.
Yeah, I think, and that's common sense. We've been hearing lots of rumors of Zinch books going to get redone next year, so they're going to come back magic heavy again. So I think we'll see a lot more of crystal anyway.
Yeah, that concerns me significantly, actually. Well, it means they're generating summoning points from every spell I cast. If I'm casting 8 to 10 spells, then they're getting free units from me. So I think the last city we have is Tempest Eye. Tempest Eye has 3 command traits. Command traits, sorry. Yep. We have the +1 to charge rolls for friendly Tempest Eye within 12. We have add 1 to the wound roll for Tempest Eye within 12 of the general, or the general can run and charge in the same turn, and they fight at the start of combat.
Hawkeye. The second one. Yeah, you add 1 to the missile weapons.
Yeah.
Add 1 to the missile weapons, so you're putting that on
for
what?
The wound roll, sorry.
Yep. Yeah. So this is where the engine rigger, we're going to really bring that attack down.
Engine rigger, Iron Drakes, Pistoliers, take your pick.
Scourge Runner Chariots.
Chariots. Yeah.
I feel like some will do more damage than others, but sure.
It's a buff in a bubble, so you can get them all.
Yeah. We have 3 artifacts. We have Don't Take Battle Shock within 12 of the bearer. We have 4+ command point, or we can reroll charge rolls within 12 of the bearer. I don't mind the banner. I don't mind the reroll. Sorry, the reroll charges.
So I to be honest, when I first started playing, I went straight to the realms for these, but then with the more I'm playing, the helm, the battle shock one, is quite nice.
Yeah.
Particularly if you, again, like we said at the beginning about Tempest Eye with the list, is that you don't really care if you're going first or second. This really helps you because you really don't care if you go first or second because you don't have to worry about battle shock.
Yeah.
So I think there's room in that one.
Yeah, and it again comes down to the kind of list you're playing. If you're playing a horde heavy list, that's amazing. If you're playing an MSU list, it's not as needed, I guess.
Yeah, depends on the build. Good call.
Depends on your build.
Good call. We have the Aura of Glory, we have the Strike of Eagles, we have the Celestial Vision. So we can either add +1 to the attack characteristics within 12 of the bearer of the caster. We can pick an enemy unit within 30. That's pretty huge. Roll 6 dice on a 4+. It's a mortal wound, or you can generate additional command point. That's one of the first spells that you can generate command points. That's pretty cool. What do we think of that?
I like the second two.
Yeah, they're all good. So Aura of Glory depends on your build. If you're taking, like we talked about, engine riggers, then or you're taking big blocks of hammerers, longbeards, big horde units where you're going to get a bonus from actually stacking up their attacks. I really like Strike of Eagles. It's really good. Yeah,
Strike of Eagles definitely stands out.
In that, again, if we go back to the whole idea of the list for Tempest Eye, if you are given first turn, you're normally out of range of a lot of your damage spells that you can do. But 30 is the 30 inches that make it good. Yeah. So you can pick a unit 30 inches away. You're doing, 2, maybe 3 mortal wounds before you start any of your shooting. It's just that gives you another option. It's actually been really good in the games I've used it.
It's also people get concerned, like even the Luminarch, but just by knowing there's a 30-inch threat range, people freak out. And people just knowing that there's that 30-inch spell, people will start deploying a little bit funny to be away from that spell. So the psychological damage can be just as important as actually what it does on the table.
Yeah. If you think about on other games that we've talked about, like Shadow Warriors and things like that, being able to drop in 9 inches away. Well, if somebody's leaving a little unit at the back just to try and block off some zone, and then you put this from 30 inches away, you're going to start creating little gaps where you can drop the rest of your army into. So it just gives you it's again options. Just gives you little options all the way through the game, which I quite like.
And even just chipping some wounds off that model, if 6 dice, by maths hammer, you should get 3 out of 6. And then maybe the Shadow Warriors or like a Luminarch comes down and does those last few wounds to take out some of those key heroes. So that damage could just be enough to really, screw up that Skaven Bombardier or that Arch Regent or whatever it might be.
So when I first read them, I thought the Aura Glory and the Visions were better, but as I've been playing, I've got more utility out of Strike of Eagles, I think.
Well, actually, I just thought, like, you combine Strike of Eagles with the Incantor with a Comet. The Comet, does 1 to D3 mortal wounds. Then you add this; it could be another 3 wounds. That could be popping heroes. So and then each turn you just pop a hero as the Comet is recast, or it just pulsates.
And you can chuck out swords as well, which has a sort of similar threat range.
Yeah,
and they're all adding up. And this is those first round. They've given you the turn, and you're still being able to affect the game straight away. From range.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. So that is the spell laws, that is the artifacts, that's command traits. We are really wrapping up. Is there anything that you would like to share based on the advice and the experience that you've had with this army before we wrap it all up?
I suppose.
And by the way, we're almost at 4 hours. So people who watch this video, and thank you to everyone who's watched this live, or if you're watching this on replay, thank you for hanging out for the full time. But I think we've dropped a lot of knowledge and a lot of insights and some at least ideas. Do we have all the answers today? Probably not, but I think we've got some conversation starters for you to explore the way you build an army. Because I think part of this is not just building the most effective army, but it's building the most effective army for your style and your aesthetic. I'm a very human-orientated person. There's things that I won't build into my army. There are some things that I'll pay to win. Yes, I'll bring Phoenix Guard in, but there's a way that I build my force, and this conversation has gotten me thinking about the effectiveness or things that maybe by taking my models into a different city acts very differently, and maybe that plays with the meta, or the units become better or worse. So some things to think about.
One point I was going to bring up is that take a play style that you like, or take a phase in the game that you really enjoy playing in, and then just look at the cities and find something that works around that. If you like a combat-heavy army, play your Hammer Hall, play your Tempest Side with a bunch of combat-heavy stuff. There's definitely ways to play an army that suits your play style in most of these living cities, most of these cities of Sigmar.
For me, it's a great book. It's just such a good book. It's great for people coming into the hobby. It's great for people that want to be competitive. It's amazing for hobbyists. And what I really like as well is I can see that I'll be playing this book in 2 to 3 years' time, because there's so much variety. It will be freshened up with every new release of some other factions as well. It's just going to keep going, and there's variety in the build. There's
it's interesting.
Sorry.
No, I was just to pull out that point for a second. It's interesting, and anyone who's followed this channel for a while and has heard me speak about my journey, I've played the Empire one faction for over 15 years. And then when I came to AOS, I played the Free Guild in a mixed order force before it had rules for another 2.5 years. So the diversity of the Empire, I finally see has returned in this book. But now I've got the elves and I've got the dwarves that have just made this book even bigger than the Empire has ever been. So I couldn't agree more that this book is something that's going to last for a long time. And you don't have to go outside if you don't want to.
Yeah.
I got really bored of my Gits. My Gits I really enjoyed, but I played them for 12 to 18 months and I kind of had enough. I think this book is going to be for a long time.
I've had no interest in playing Sylvaneth all year, but I'm interested in playing Living City. I don't want to go back to pure Sylvaneth, but yeah, I like this. It gives you so many options.
What's that like? You build these cities army, and it's like, what does it look like with KO? And what happens if I bring Stormcast in? And what happens if I bring in, some Deepkin? And then what happens if I do this? And then there's just so much variety.
Just think about who you play regularly, and like I used to play a guy that had Pestilence all the time, and this gives you the tools to change around, not the whole army, but you can start changing your amount. When Fett comes out, you can just change little bits and pieces, and you'll be back in the game. Yeah. So yeah.
Just look at whatever narrative list Liam is running, and find a way to counter that.
Catapults, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good point. Like the people are talking about building potentially 2 catapults in their Bone Reapers army. So things like the Everblaze Comet, the Umbral Spell Portal, with some of these spells that we've talked about, could be a great way to start countering and reaching at those armies. Then you add a Shadow Warrior to pop in, or a Living City, and those catapults could be not as effective. But then KO come in and something new happens. We've got tools to tweak and modify and bounce around.
You can take it to as competitive or as hobby focused as you want.
Yeah.
And that with outside a couple of builds at the moment, you really need to play the army as well, which is a great challenge. So yeah, it's great. It's a really good book.
In this book,
I think my parting advice to people who have hung on this long is make this your own. I mentioned earlier that I've converted my Phoenix Guard to be Free Guild, and I've put on great swords. I've sculpted Twin Tail Comet on all of the chest plates with green stuff. I'm looking at getting demigryph halberds. I'm making this city, and you look at people like Chris Peach. You look at there Duncan's built out an amazing like Greek Roman kind of free city. There are stories from the realm of Shaiish where the dead and the living work together, the ancestors. There's so much you can do with this book. Have fun converting and modeling and creating a narrative. And look at someone like Andrew Bigwood, who has created his own story of Molten Heart, and hell, he's even gone out and made dice and got like custom decals made up. So I think this, find your place in the mortal realm, stake it, claim it, and own it and have fun. I think that's the first time in a long time we've owned a spot in the mortal realms, and I'm excited. Nice. If you haven't noticed.
Yeah. likewise, it's so good, such a good book.
So yeah, it's great, and we're very blessed that a lot of our armies got brought over. There are some people that didn't make the transition, but with some hobby and some kits, I've got my Empire archers, which are a range that no longer exists. I've gone out to a third-party supplier, Max Mini, which they had some really cool hooded human heads. So I've stripped my Empire archers, and I'm going to kit bash my own Shadow Warriors, but instead of them being elf, I'm going to make them human. So there's a way to do that with your old models. So
we've used dispossessed Thunderers and now Free Guild Riflemen, handgunners. Yeah,
I've seen some really cool Duarden, some ones that didn't make the cut, but they've got like great swords, so they've kind of kit bashed great swords. So
is that the guys who's put them on stilts?
I did see that one. I've seen, but I saw ones without stilts. But I've seen Demigroup. There's the Halfling army that had used Free Guild rules, but they had Halflings from Blood Bowl riding Griffhounds, which were meant to be Demigriffs, and like this. The world is your oyster.
Is it the Isle of Blood? The elves from that, the Reavers.
Yep.
I've put KO pistols on them, and now they're my pistoliers. So
yeah,
amazing.
I'm really cheap, so it works.
Rest in peace, high elves.
yeah.
If I was ever rich enough, I would try to find the Tillian marksmen. They were a Dogs of War unit that had wings that could fly. I would make them my KO engine riggers. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that unit. There was these like Tillian kind of like, they were very like Leonardo da Vinci kind of crazy. But anyway, make
like
this
a triangle, were they?
Yeah, they had like little triangle wings, and like they were a flying unit. But again, like KO looks weird for me, that steampunk feel. But the Birdmen of Catraz, whatever. But yeah, thank you, Merchant Prince. We're rambling. It's bedtime. I hope you guys have had fun. I've really enjoyed your experience and your knowledge. Lee, if people want to find you and chat more about Duarden, where can they find you?
Just on Twitter on the AOS Wilmot. That's pretty much the best place to find me.
And Hayden, if they want to talk elves.
So I am on Twitter and Instagram as the Elf Bro. I'm on YouTube as the Elf Bro. Yeah, it's pretty much me.
And if you found me already, you guys are probably enjoying yourselves, and you know where to find me. Everything is in the channel description, guys. Lee, Hayden, thank you very much for your time. We are just under 4 hours. Wow. I hope this adds a lot of value and people enjoy it. If you enjoyed it, please make sure you leave a comment and let us know that you took value out of this episode. Thanks, guys, and good night and happy wargaming, and get out there and roll more sixes.
Peace out.
Cheers.